Chapter 1893. The little white dragon kept on talking about the advertisements. The little black dragon rammed into the barrier in a frenzy. Enlin's body and mind were being ravaged by the two dragons. Su Xiaolan stroked Enlin's back as she waited for the advertisement to begin. 5 minutes later, the little white dragon's voice sounded again, and it said, "The advertisement is over. May I ask if you wish to visit the Azure Dragon Heart Essence?" Yes. Enlin was on the brink of death. The little white dragon twisted its seductive body. "If you confirm, please rub the number 1 Dragon Ball. If you deny, please rub the number 2 Dragon Ball. Return to the previous level and rub the number 3 Dragon Ball." Su Xiaolan hurriedly rushed over to rub the number 2 Dragon Ball. "Hurry up." Enlin had an eager expression on his face. The little white dragon nodded. "The Azure Dragon Heart Essence you've chosen is the best service on the Dragon Origin Star. If you pay 1,000,000 more Spirit Stones, you'll receive a treasure-level Infernal Dragon Trial. Would you like that?" Enlin. The little white dragon. "If you do, please rub the number 1 ball. If you don't, please rub the number 2 ball." Su Xiaolan took a deep breath before rubbing the number 2 ball. The little white dragon continued, "You can choose not to. Then, if you add another 500,000 Spirit Stones, you will receive an 8th grade sexual enhancement immortal pill made by the Blood Dragon Maiden. Would you like it?" The little white dragon continued. "Is this going to end or not?" Enlin wailed with saliva dripping from the corners of his mouth. The little white dragon. "If you do, please rub the number 1 ball. If you don't." Su Xiaolan's heart was burning with anxiety as she rubbed the number 2 ball. The little white dragon. "Please rub the number 6 ball." The air suddenly fell silent. "Sorry, there was an error. Please reactivate the dragon-seeking navigation system." The little white dragon self-destructed with a bang. The white dragon ball reappeared on the platform, as if nothing had happened. Su Xiaolan's eyes widened, and she was rooted to the spot. PFFF. Enlin spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground, paralyzed. "Senior Enlin. Fellow Taoist Enlin. Papa. Daddy, boo-hoo. I'm sorry, Enlin." Su Xiaolan and the dragons pounced on Enlin. The scene was tragic. Bai Shui and the other dragons had never tried normal service before, so they had no idea that it was such a scam. However, in order to stabilize Enlin and Su Xiaolan's emotions, Bai Shui still volunteered to be the operator. The dragon pearl exploded and the little white dragon appeared. "Welcome to the dragon-seeking navigation. I'm your favorite customer service, Xiao Bai Bai. What can I do for you? For normal service, please rub the number 1 bead. Do you want to revive the male dragon's glory like me? Do you want to have fun every night like me? Great, I'm a trash dragon. Equipment recycling, another 1,000,000 Spirit Stones and I can get a treasure-grade Infernal Dragon Trial. Add another 500,000 Spirit Stones. Add another 2,000,000 Spirit Stones, and you'll be promoted to an annual membership, and you'll be exempted from advertisements." Half an hour later, the little white dragon danced in the sky and sang. "La la 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 la. I'm the adorable Xiao Bai Bai. I'm here even when the sky is raining. I eat well and run fast." Everyone listened expressionlessly. Ding dong. "Congratulations, you've received the right to view the Azure Dragon Heart Essence." The little white dragon chuckled. Su Xiaolan heaved a sigh of relief. The retarded dragon service had finally come to an end. Rumble. The gate deep within the palace began to open. Tears welled up in Bai Shui's eyes. The little white dragon suddenly said, "You can view the Azure Dragon Heart Essence now. Add another 100,000 Spirit Stones, and you'll be provided with all types of spirit fruits and drinks. Would you like them?" "Yes, please rub the number 1 bead." Her fair, jade-like palm was imbued with boundless dragon might as it slapped little white dragon's face, flattening and sinking its face before it exploded. "Piss off!" Bam! The little white dragon exploded from Su Xiaolan's slap. All of the dragons were dumbstruck. For some reason, they felt a sense of elation. The two little azure dragons placed Enlin on the black brick before using the black brick as a stretcher. They followed by Shui and the others through one gate after another before heading deeper into the palace. After passing through the final gate, which was glowing with azure light like flowing water, a new scene appeared before their eyes. Su Xiaolan could sense the true dragon bloodline within her body throbbing. This was an extreme yearning for something, as if she would be able to possess the entire world if she could possess it. Azure essential power flowed through the air like a river. This was the essential power of truth. At the very center of the river, there was a coiled-up azure dragon with its eyes closed as it snored. Azure light erupted from the center of its coiled-up body. This was essential power that was extremely rich to the extreme. Through the essential power, one could vaguely see an azure object in the shape of an octagonal ice flower. It was constantly releasing the purest power, and it fluctuated as if it were the beating of a heart. Regardless of whether it was Holy Jin Kuan-gu, Su Xiaolan, or Bai Shui, all of them were struck by the urge to submit to that object, as if it were the truth of this world and the only thing that would last forever. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but want to approach it. However, there were actually layers of terrifying enchantment barriers around the azure dragon, all of which were above the Tao integration stage, and they struck her with a sense of extreme peril. Papa, Papa! Look! That's the azure dragon heart essence that you've always wanted to see. The two little azure dragons pushed Enlin, who was lying on the black brick. Enlin, who was on the brink of death, abruptly sat up with a startled expression. He stared at the azure dragon heart essence with a scorching gaze, and the throbbing in his sea of vital energy became more and more intense. The little black dragon raised its head and stared blankly at the azure dragon heart essence. An invisible power slowly passed through the sea of vital energy and flowed into the little black dragon's body. Welcome, friends of the Azure Dragon Tribe. Enlin, Su Xiaolan, thank you for your contributions to the Azure Dragon Tribe. Also, congratulations to Ms. Su Xiaolan on becoming the guardian deity of our Azure Dragon Tribe. A benevolent yet authoritative voice sounded. The azure dragon with the azure dragon heart essence wrapped around its body opened its pure golden eyes. Its eyes were extremely beautiful, pure, and not blinding, giving onlookers a sense of boundless warmth and happiness. Su Xiaolan and Enlin were both stunned by this pair of enchanting eyes. Enlin detected its aura and was surprised to find that it was a god of creation stage mighty figure. It looked more like one of the four holy beasts, the azure dragon, than the little black dragon in his sea of vital energy. Su Xiaolan pays her respects to the clear origin dragon. Su Xiaolan extended a respectful salute. Enlin pays his respects to Ms. Clear Origin Dragon. Enlin also extended a salute. The other party's attitude was very friendly, so they had to be polite as well. Even though Enlin and Su Xiaolan were still angry at that retarded customer service, it had nothing to do with the Clear Origin Dragon, so they couldn't say anything. A friendly smile appeared on the Clear Origin Dragon's face. The fact that you were able to pass the test of the dragon-seeking navigation system I designed proves that you really do have the right to visit this place. Feel free to look at the Azure Dragon Heart Essence through the spell formation. Enlin and Su Xiaolan's veins suddenly bulged. Chapter 1894. Azure Dragon Heart Essence My A**S. He really wanted to beat the crap out of this dragon. What kind of brain did this seemingly intelligent dragon have to come up with such a retarded system? Su Xiaolan and Enlin's breathing accelerated as they desperately repressed their rage. Sigh. I'm so angry. I really want to beat him up. The Azure Dragon Heart Essence is the source of the Azure Dragon Tribe's fortune, the source of Tao, the symbol of power, and the embodiment of the one and only eternal holy birth. It is the most important treasure of the Azure Dragon Tribe. The Clear Origin Dragon was clearly refining the Azure Dragon Heart Essence, but he still provided a friendly explanation. It's exactly because the Azure Dragon Heart Essence has become an ownerless treasure that the ancient tribe has set their sights on it. They are extremely powerful, and they are taking advantage of the fact that our Azure Dragon Holy Birth is incomplete to launch an all-out attack on the Azure Dragon star system. Our Azure Dragon tribe is extremely powerful, but there are too few of us. We won't be able to last long in a war of attrition, and we are also lacking in top-tier combat prowess. After all, the ancient tribe has 3 extreme Dao beast monarchs. It's exactly because of this that the situation on the battlefield is quite bleak. The clear origin dragon heaved a resigned sigh as he spoke. Patriarch Azure Dragon has already passed away, and I am the most likely candidate to inherit his holy birth. If I can receive the acknowledgement of the Azure Dragon Heart Essence and successfully refine it before the ancient tribe invades the Dragon Origin Star, then I will be able to turn the tables. Unlin knew that the clear origin dragon was speaking to Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan was now the guardian deity of the Azure Dragon tribe, so she was naturally aware of the current situation of the Azure Dragon tribe. With Master Clear Origin Dragon here, our Azure Dragon tribe has no reason to fear the ancient tribe. Koen Gu immediately buttered up the Clear Origin Dragon. A warm smile appeared on the Clear Origin Dragon's face as he looked up into the sky with the Azure Dragon Heart Essence. Who will be the pinnacle of the Azure Dragon tribe? I will stand proudly in the vault of heaven and control the universe in my palm. Master Clear Origin Dragon will definitely succeed. He will lead our tribe to glory. All of the other true dragons chimed in with excitement. Unlin's heart also jolted upon hearing this. This Clear Origin Dragon was quite a character to be reckoned with. In the vast and boundless galaxy, the 4 hidden saints were very famous, and their status was extremely high. However, among the 4 hidden sages, the Azure Dragon clan suffered the most, losing an ancestor. The other 3 saint beasts were either injured or in hiding, so they could still be considered a deterrent. Only the Azure Dragon race was being bullied. However, perhaps the Azure Dragon tribe was going to rise again if the Clear Origin Dragon could refine the Azure Dragon Heart Essence. Unlin looked at the Azure Dragon Heart Essence with interest. This was the most precious treasure of the Azure Dragon tribe. Just the aura alone was very alluring. Unlin sensed the destiny and power of the entire race, as well as the Tao of the Azure Dragon. Not only was it eternal, but it was also the only one. It was like flowing water, endless and boundless. It was also like the beating of a heart, producing rhythmic fluctuations. It was indeed a good thing. It was no wonder that the ancient desolate race had mobilized their entire race to fight against the Azure Dragon race. This was an extremely valuable treasure even to a god of creation. At the very least, it was more badass than any of the treasures Unlin had ever seen. It had already transcended beyond the divine rank. Unlin then turned to Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan was looking at the Azure Dragon Heart Essence with a calm expression, and her eyes were particularly bright, as if she were looking at some exquisitely beautiful scenery. This trip would most likely be very beneficial to her Tao. With this in mind, a doting smile appeared on Unlin's face. Setting aside the little black dragon, just the fact that Su Xiaolan was able to reap some benefits made this trip worth it. But all of a sudden, he was stunned again. Wait, how did this trip become Su Xiaolan's opportunity again? He had endured the pain of childbirth, but Su Xiaolan was able to progress by leaps and bounds? Unlin was suddenly struck by the urge to throw up a mouthful of blood. Unlin turned to the little black dragon again, only to discover that the little black dragon was lazing in his sea of vital energy. Instead, it was happily absorbing the energy within the Azure Dragon Heart Essence, and the flow of this energy was even shielded from the Clear Origin Dragon's senses. Is there an end to this? Is there an end to this? Why aren't you getting the F***CK out here? You haven't even paid me rent, yet you're using my sea of vital energy as your home. What kind of unreasonable behavior is this? What kind of law is this? Enlin became more and more enraged as he thought about this, and he turned to his system in search of a way to become more powerful. I can't go on like this. If this goes on, how can I maintain my authority? High-rank war god mystic technique and cultivation base at the return to void pinnacle stage were still not enough to satisfy Enlin. Enlin looked at his system to find the cultivation base tab. Dao integration initial stage. Condition: bite a piece of flesh from a paramount heavenly god. Enlin was struck by a sense of frustration every time he looked at this condition. Was he born in the year of the dog? Why did he have to bite a piece of flesh from a paramount heavenly god? This mission wasn't actually that depressing. On the contrary, Enlin felt like it was quite simple. After all, he was no longer an ordinary return to void trash. He had attained the phenomenal success stage of his body of the war god and wielded 7 heavenly gods as well as a high-rank war god mystic technique. Normal heavenly gods were no longer able to do anything to him. Paramount heavenly gods were indeed powerful, but he felt like he could still bite a piece of flesh from one of them. However, he couldn't count on increasing his cultivation base for now. He turned his attention to the other sections of his system. He had already perfected all of the 5 elemental wind and lightning cultivation methods, and only the yin and yang cultivation methods had yet to be perfected. However, there were no missions, either. The only one that had a mission was the spell technique below. Super Divine Might Technique. Condition: beat a god of creation stage living being to the point of complete submission. In the past, he had scoffed at this mission and felt like it was impossible to complete. Beat a god of creation into the point of complete submission? It would already be a miracle if the god of creation didn't slap him to death. But now, there was hope for it to work. The gods of creation of the Tai Chu continent were too powerful, but the gods of creation of the realm of stars were a little weaker. Apparently, the ancient tribe had 3 extreme Dao beast monarchs, and they ruled over the entire realm of stars. It looked like there was a chance for him to go and meet them. An expectant smile appeared on Enlin's face as he thought about this. Perhaps he would be able to have a hearty battle. Just as Enlin was fantasizing about this, a thump suddenly sounded in his sea of vital energy. The little black dragon opened its golden eyes and its body inexplicably grew a size. Howl, howl, howl! The little black dragon yelled. Enlin was quite perplexed as to what it was trying to do. However, the clear origin dragon's body shuddered violently as he stared at the octagonal ice flower with shock and horror on his face. No. How could this be? Why has my connection with the Azure Dragon Heart Essence suddenly weakened? That's impossible. Our connection is clearly getting closer and closer, and it has already acknowledged me, so why is it suddenly ignoring me now? He was completely perplexed, and his body began to writhe in anxiety. What's going on? What's going on? The clear origin dragon writhed incessantly, and his previous pride and calmness had completely disappeared. The weakening of the connection meant that the Azure Dragon Heart Essence had rejected him and had made a better choice. As such, the chances of him successfully refining the Azure Dragon Heart Essence would be extremely slim. It could even be said that the refinement had already failed. No, I won't allow this to happen. World Dragon Dao Eye, activate. The clear origin dragon roared as his beautiful eyes suddenly became chaotic. He then seemed to have detected something, and he abruptly turned toward Enlin. Chapter 1895. Enlin's heart jolted with shock. This was the gaze of a powerful being, and he was struck by a sense of pressure. It's you! The clear origin dragon roared at Enlin. No, it's not me. Enlin hurriedly shook his head. Su Xiaolan leaped toward Enlin before drawing her sword and roaring at the Azure Dragon. Why are you yelling at me, Enlin? Boom. The clear origin dragon's god of creation stage might crashed down upon Enlin and Su Xiaolan, and his voice was like a thunderclap. The power of the Azure Dragon Heart Essence has already flowed into your body, And you're still trying to deny it? All of the dragon's expressions shifted upon hearing this. No wonder Enlin wanted to see the Azure Dragon Heart Essence. Was he trying to steal the power of the Azure Dragon Heart Essence? Enlin was a spy sent by the enemy to foil the Clear Origin Dragon's plan to become a sage in order to steal the Azure Dragon Heart Essence from the Clear Origin Dragon. The more they thought about it, the more astonished all of the Dragon Tribe's super mighty figures were. Enlin raised his hands high into the air with an innocent expression. I really don't know whether the Azure Dragon Heart Essence has flowed into my body or not. Could it be that it likes me and voluntarily entered my arms? Is that wrong? Howl! The Clear Origin Dragon roared with rage. You still dare to deny it? Enlin, let me ask you, have you seen me unleash any spell techniques since I came here? The Clear Origin Dragon fell silent. Enlin continued, is the power of the Azure Dragon Heart Essence still flowing into my body? Are there any energy fluctuations coming from my body? The Clear Origin Dragon opened his mouth before closing it again. The power of the Azure Dragon Heart Essence was still flowing into Enlin's body, but Enlin really wasn't moving. There can only be one truth. Enlin pointed at the Clear Origin Dragon's octagonal ice flower. All of this was done by the Azure Dragon Heart Essence. All of the true dragons were astonished. The Clear Origin Dragon was perplexed. Was this the fault of the Azure Dragon Heart Essence? Suddenly, they felt a little sad. It was one thing for the Dragon Origin Star to acknowledge a half-dragon female as its guardian deity. Now, the paramount treasure of the Azure Dragon Tribe, the Azure Dragon Heart Essence, was offering itself to a human? Oh my God! What was wrong with this world? Did it have to be so ridiculous? The Clear Origin Dragon was a little dumbstruck. However, as it sensed that its connection with the Azure Dragon Heart Essence was becoming weaker and weaker, it roared at Enlin again. Piss off, Enlin! You're about to ruin my plan to become a saint. You can't stay here any longer. Enlin's face darkened. What are you yelling about? Once you lose your manners. Rumble! The green ripples instantly spread out for thousands of miles. An even more terrifying pressure enveloped the surrounding area. The Clear Origin Dragon completely unleashed his might, and heaven and earth trembled with the rage of a divine dragon of creation. Regardless of whether it was Kuan Gu, Xing Jin, Bai Shui, or Qi Yu, all of them were struck by a sense of asphyxiation. Enlin still stood on the spot with a calm expression as he looked at the Clear Origin Dragon. Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly, but she didn't seem to be affected by this. Very good. To think that you're able to withstand my dragon might. The Clear Origin Dragon's expression darkened. But if you don't piss off, then don't blame me for being merciless. So what if they were gods of creation? It wasn't like he hadn't defeated them before. This was the Dragon Origin Star, which was his home turf. He wouldn't be afraid even if two God of Creation stage super mighty figures showed up. Don't bully my daddy. Stop. The two little Azure Dragons appeared beside Enlin and scolded in a loud voice. The male Azure Dragon yelled, the Azure Dragon Heart Essence has acknowledged Daddy, so why don't we let Daddy become a holy birth instead? The female Azure Dragon nodded incessantly. That's right, that's right. The Azure Dragon Heart Essence has already forced itself on Father, and it's filled with love. It's a match made in heaven with Father. Isn't this an easy problem to resolve? The Clear Origin Dragon became even more enraged upon hearing this. F***ck off. Have you gone F*** king stupid? Why would you acknowledge a human as your daddy? You have to realize that your daddy died after giving birth to you. His thunderous roar was imbued with a domineering dragon might, and the surrounding walls instantly crumbled. However, the two little Azure Dragons chose to remain by Enlin's side and didn't budge an inch. The essential power of the Azure Dragon Heart Essence suddenly shuddered violently. The Clear Origin Dragon's expression shifted drastically as he sensed that his connection with Enlin and Su Xiaolan had plummeted, and he opened his mouth to unleash a breath. Roar. F***ck off. The azure dragon's breath swept forth like a surging river, turning everything in its wake azure. The clear origin dragon's essential power was imbued within the dragon's breath, and it was not something that a Tao integration stage powerful being could defend against. Even the two little azure dragons were struck by the attack, and their expressions shifted drastically. They didn't think that the clear origin dragon would suddenly turn on them and unleash his essential power from the get-go. Rumble, the dragon's breath was like a surging azure river, destroying everything in its path. Papa! Mommy! The two spoiled little azure dragons were scared ***less, and they instantly began to wail for their parents. Right at this critical moment, whoosh! A streak of black light suddenly appeared. The extreme sharpness of the blade tore the clear origin dragon's breath in half. The two halves of energy pierced through the entire building with unstoppable force before extending into the boundless distance. The little azure dragons opened their eyes to discover that there was a little black dragon standing in front of them. This figure wasn't very tall, but it was extremely reliable and was able to slice the clear origin dragon's attack in half with its tail. The two little azure dragons could sense the aura of the little black dragon, and their eyes widened as they opened their mouths to speak in a trembling voice, "Daddy! Daddy! It really is you!" The dragon's breath dispersed. A little black dragon appeared in front of the two little azure dragons, and it stared at the gargantuan azure dragon with its golden eyes as it spoke in a husky voice imbued with boundless might. A mighty god of creation stage dragon actually dared to attack two Tao integration stage children? How shameless! The clear origin dragon's expression shifted drastically upon seeing the little black dragon's appearance. How could it be you? Gu, Bai Shui, and the others were completely dumbstruck upon seeing the little black dragon's appearance. Xing Jin's expression faltered. Impossible. Didn't you die? How did you suddenly come back to life? There's no mistaking it. Even though there's a slight difference in appearance, the energy fluctuations and the paramount aura emanating from his body can't fool me. Bai Shui murmured to herself with a dazed expression. Tears welled up in Qi Yu's eyes, and he collapsed to the ground with a reverent expression. Qi Yu welcomes the return of Patriarch Azure Dragon. Boom boom boom, Xing Jin, Bai Shui, and Gu also knelt to the ground as their voices erupted throughout heaven and earth. Welcome back, Patriarch Azure Dragon. Welcome back, Patriarch Azure Dragon. Chapter 1896. The voices of the true dragons reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The collective voices of all the true dragons spread through the entire dragon origin star at an incredible speed with the assistance of a special power. The consciousness of the planet was also jumping with joy. It was also welcoming its master. Welcome back, Patriarch Azure Dragon. Almost all of the dragon tribe living beings looked up into the sky. No one knew where the voices were coming from. No one could verify the authenticity of this information. But for some reason, the millions of beings of the Azure Dragon clan all felt joy in their hearts. Colorful mist as the sky, lightning as the sea, and the dragon ball as the sun. The pair of dull eyes of the Azure Dragon building that soared up from the sea of lightning slowly gained vigor, looking very lively. It looked like it could soar into the 9 heavens at any moment. Within the building, the little black dragon put his hands on his hips and sneered, "Brother Qingyuan, your papa is back!" "Daddy! Daddy!" The two little azure dragons pounced toward the little black dragon with tears in their eyes. They finally understood why they felt a bloodline connection with Enlin. It turned out that their father was hiding in Enlin's body. The reunion between father and son was extremely touching. Slap! Boom! The two little azure dragons were slapped flying by the little black dragon. Piss off. Can't you see I'm facing off against the clear origin dragon? What the f***ck are you talking about? The little black dragon let loose a torrent of abuse before turning his attention back to the clear origin dragon. The male azure dragon clasped his hands over his face as he stared blankly at the little black dragon in the distance. The female azure dragon was in an even worse state. She had just been moved to tears, and now she was being slapped into tears again. The reunion between father and daughter was completely different from what she had imagined. Anlin and Su Xiaolan were also a little dumbstruck. Were these two little azure dragons really the little black dragon's biological children? No. Holy F***ck. Even their colors were different. Anlin's heart jolted with shock. From a different perspective, the clear origin dragon looked more like the father of the two little azure dragons. The little black dragon looked at the clear origin dragon with a cold smile. You didn't think that I would still be alive, did you? The clear origin dragon's expression darkened. I really didn't expect this. The little black dragon's claws twined with a pitch-black divine light. Then, are you prepared to meet your death? Through a special reincarnation method, you've reformed your divine soul and physical body, but you're still too young. Your strength hasn't stabilized yet, not to mention that you've even lost the most important holy seat. The clear origin dragon stared at the little black dragon before making a grabbing motion, upon which the octagonal ice flower tremored slightly before landing in his hand. Also, don't forget that the azure dragon heart essence is in my hands. Even if it refuses to acknowledge me, I can still forcibly draw upon its power. Kuan Gu and the other dragons were dumbstruck again. Wait, Big Boss Azure Dragon, Big Boss Clear Origin Dragon, what are you doing? Boss Azure Dragon has returned, shouldn't we be celebrating? Why do all of you look like you're at daggers drawn? The Clear Origin Dragon fell silent upon hearing this. The little black dragon chortled with glee. The four of us holy beasts were severely wounded and sealed away by Pangu. Pangu had no intention of taking our lives, but you. Never would I have thought that my most trusted brother would stab me in the back when I was at my weakest and try to kill me. The Clear Origin Dragon chuckled. I can no longer progress in my Tao. Only the holy birth will allow me to see the world beyond. In order to progress further in my Tao, I'm willing to give up everything. Ah, you're willing to give up everything in order to pursue your Tao. You truly have fulfilled the words you said back then. After the little black dragon smiled, a deep sorrow surged in her eyes. But I also said that I hate betrayal the most. Anyone who betrays me must die. The Clear Origin Dragon nodded before waving a hand through the air, upon which the azure dragon heart essence suddenly expanded into an azure ball of light. Come with me to the azure dragon realm? I'm afraid that the dragon origin star won't be able to withstand the shockwaves from our battle. All right. The two streaks of light flew into the azure ball of light without any hesitation. An azure light erupted forth from the ball of light, which was countless times more dazzling than the sun. However, it quickly dimmed after a short while. When the light completely disappeared, the azure dragon heart essence had disappeared along with the little black dragon and the clear origin dragon. Silence returned to the building. Su Xiaolan and Anlin also fell silent. The two little azure dragons also fell silent. Kuan Gu, Xing Jin, Bai Shui, and Qi Yu also fell silent. Patriarch Azure Dragon was killed by the clear origin dragon? An incredulous expression appeared on Bai Shui's face. No. Big Boss Qin Yuan has always been a conscientious person. He has risked his life many times for the sake of the Azure Dragon tribe, so how could he be Patriarch Azure Dragon's killer? Tears welled up in Xing Jin's eyes. The clear origin dragon had always been his idol, and he was unable to accept this. Anlin was speechless. The clear origin dragon just revealed that he's a werewolf, and you still don't want to believe him? Brother, don't worship him like that. Xing Jin was completely speechless upon hearing this, and he collapsed to the ground with a dejected expression. The two little azure dragons were extremely concerned. What do we do? What if Dad can't defeat him? The female azure dragon asked. Don't worry, Dad was already so powerful when he slapped us just then, so he definitely won't be a problem. The male azure dragon consoled. The female azure dragon. If we hadn't mentioned this, we would still be siblings. I didn't think that the clear origin dragon would be such a dragon. Koen-gu clenched his claws with grief and indignation on his face. He was the pride and pillar of the Azure Dragon tribe. Even when all living beings thought that Patriarch Azure Dragon had fallen, he was still the hope of the Azure Dragon tribe's revival. However, what none of the dragons thought was that the clear origin dragon was the culprit behind Patriarch Azure Dragon's death. In any case, we should be happy that Patriarch Azure Dragon is back, shouldn't we? Bai Shui wiped the tears from her eyes and forced a smile onto her face. After all, his body and consciousness have only been reforged not too long ago. If he can't defeat the clear origin dragon, Koen-gu was a little concerned. Then we'll avenge Patriarch Azure Dragon with our lives. Chi-yu spoke in a firm voice. That's right. The clear origin dragon must die regardless of the outcome. Either he dies today or we die. There's no other choice, Bai Shui chimed in. The clear origin dragon was very important to the Azure Dragon tribe, and he had made many great contributions to the Azure Dragon tribe, so he was very much loved and revered by the Azure Dragon tribe. However, he had made a fatal mistake, which was to attempt to kill Patriarch Azure Dragon. Regardless of whether he succeeded or not, this was an unforgivable crime. Alright, I'll stake my life on this. Koen-gu gritted his teeth. All of the other dragon tribe's super mighty figures chimed in. Unlin turned to all of the true dragons with a hint of surprise in his eyes. It looked like the little black dragon really did hold an unshakable position in their hearts. He then turned to look at the empty space in front of him. Now, all that remained was to be seen. Chapter 1897. There was another world within the Azure Dragon heart essence. Patriarch Azure Dragon and the Clear Origin Dragon were most likely battling in that world. Unfortunately, Unlin was unable to detect the coordinates of the Azure Dragon realm, so he couldn't even spectate. They could only stand on the spot and wait for the final result. Unlin, you had a stomachache because that little black Patriarch Azure Dragon was in your stomach? Su Xiaolan asked. It was in my sea of vital energy, not my stomach, Unlin corrected. He wanted to come out but couldn't, which was why I felt like I was experiencing dystocia. After that, he was able to come out with the power of the Azure Dragon heart essence, which saved me a lot of pain. Your sea of vital energy. You really can store anything. I had thought that it would only be able to store energy and materials, but who would have thought that even Patriarch Azure Dragon's sea of vital energy could be stored in it? Unlin also wore a disconsolate expression on his face. When the Azure Dragon was still an egg, it was still a fake thing. But when the egg hatched, it became a real Azure Dragon. I'm also in despair, hatched egg? The male Azure Dragon exclaimed. A real Azure Dragon? The female Azure Dragon blinked with a thoughtful expression. Just as Unlin was wondering what they were thinking, the two little Azure Dragons pounced toward him. The male Azure Dragon, Grandpa. The female Azure Dragon, Grandpa. Grandpa. Grandpa, Unlin. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but burst into laughter. Grandma. Grandma. The two little Azure Dragons then yelled at Su Xiaolan in an affectionate manner. Su Xiaolan couldn't laugh anymore. Were these two little Azure Dragons retarded? Could it be that they hadn't been taught to read properly after they were born? How did I become a grandpa? I have nothing to do with your father. Unlin flared up with rage. How could you not have anything to do with him? Grandpa made an egg and gave birth to Daddy. The male Azure Dragon said, In our Azure Dragon clan, whoever lays the egg will be the parent of that egg. The female Azure Dragon nodded incessantly. Daddy's daddy is called Grandpa. Daddy's mommy is called Grandma. Unlin was in despair. He couldn't be bothered to argue with the other party. Anyway, he wouldn't lose out as a grandfather. He wondered what ancestor Green Dragon would think if he knew that his child called Unlin Grandpa. Wasn't this a joyous occasion? However, it suddenly had such an awesome father, so it wasn't a loss. Just as Enlin was letting his imagination run wild, Su Xiaolan, who was at the side, had already begun to organize the true dragons to set up a large-scale killing formation nearby. They had to prepare for the worst-case scenario. If the clear origin dragon won, then they could only try to kill the clear origin dragon or be killed by him. Enlin promised to help them, which boosted the confidence of Bai Shui and the other dragons. The two little azure dragons called him Grandpa even more passionately. Time passed slowly. 1 day later, the killing formation set up by Su Xiaolan, Kuan Gu, Xing Jin, the two little azure dragons, as well as the two guardian deities, Qi Yu and Bai Shui, had already been successfully set up. Many divine tools and divine rank items had been used to set up this killing formation, and even the most powerful treasures of the guardian deities had been set up. In terms of short-term power, it could even severely wound a god of creation. If worse comes to worst, I'll crush the guardian deity's token and draw upon the power of the dragon origin star as well as the power of the azure dragon tribe living beings within my body. Bai Shui's voice was filled with determination. Su Xiaolan's expression also stirred upon hearing this. After becoming a guardian deity, one would receive a token blessed by the dragon origin star. This was a one-time consumable, and if the guardian deity crushed the token, they would be able to borrow the power of the dragon origin star as well as the azure dragon tribe living beings for a short period of time. That way, Qi Yu and Bai Shui would also be able to obtain the power of a god of creation for a short period of time. This was the foundation of the azure dragon tribe. Of course, Su Xiaolan was also a guardian deity now, so she could also crush the token to obtain the power of a god of creation. She felt like she was even more bad *SS than Qi Yu and Bai Shui, so the power she would obtain after crushing the token would most likely be more powerful than the average god of creation. 3 god of creation stage beings should be enough to kill the clear origin dragon, right? If that didn't work out, then there was still Enlin. Time flew by. Another day passed by. There was still no conclusion to the battle. Bai Shui and Qi Yu used the power of the planet as guardian deities to inform all of the Dao integration stage true dragons of the Azure Dragon tribe of the return of Patriarch Azure Dragon, as well as the clear origin dragon's betrayal and murder. They had to keep this a secret so that their enemies wouldn't learn of this. As for the Dao integration stage true dragons, all of them had been through countless trials and tribulations, so they wouldn't do anything that would betray the Azure Dragon tribe. Otherwise, not only would their Dao hearts be damaged, even their dragon tribe bloodlines would crumble, and they would lose all of their cultivation bases. After all, not all true dragons were as freakish as the clear origin dragon. This created a massive stir among the higher-ups of the Azure Dragon tribe. All of a sudden, golden lightning roared in the sky, gales swept through the clouds, crimson flames pierced through the sky, and sword intent rang through the air. A series of powerful Dao integration stage true dragons rushed toward Enlin and the others. Aside from those who couldn't leave and had to defend the battlefront, 20 Dao integration stage true dragons had arrived in less than a day. All of them had come to reinforce Patriarch Azure Dragon. Enlin couldn't help but sigh with emotion at the sight of this spectacular lineup. The little black dragon's status in the Azure Dragon tribe could only be described as paramount. Even if he lost his holy birth, he was still the only god of the Azure Dragon tribe, and he would be willing to sacrifice his entire tribe for him. The Azure Dragon tribe army spread out around the Sea of Lightning, ready to strike. A grave atmosphere enshrouded the entire dragon origin star like a dark cloud. This was a battle that would decide the fate of the entire tribe, and there were almost no powerful beings who were willing to back down. Bai Shui looked around with a grave expression. This is an unprecedented battle for the holy Dao in the Azure Dragon tribe. The outcome of this battle will determine who will become the holy birth of the Azure Dragon tribe. I hope the victor is Patriarch Azure Dragon. If not, Our azure dragon tribe will be in danger of extinction. If the clear origin dragon won, then even if they were able to kill the clear origin dragon, their entire tribe would still be in danger of extinction. Without a god of creation stage dragon among their ranks, the azure dragon tribe would definitely become a hot commodity for all of the major powers. They could easily be devoured. Hence, the azure dragon tribe's decision to allow the victor to continue to rule over the tribe was the wisest decision. At the very least, it would prevent the entire tribe from being wiped out. Killing the clear origin dragon was a very foolish decision, but almost all of the powerful beings had chosen this foolish course of action. Another day passed by. 3 days and 3 nights had passed since the two mighty figures entered the azure dragon realm to battle. Unlin was munching on an immortal fruit when he suddenly raised his head and narrowed his eyes. It's here. Kacha, a gargantuan azure rift extended from the heavens into the sea of lightning. Howl! A dragon's roar shook heaven and earth. A gargantuan figure tore through the rift and appeared between heaven and earth. Chapter 1898. A gargantuan figure emerged from the rift that connected heaven and earth. This was an azure dragon that was so gargantuan that it struck one with a sense of asphyxiation. Its eyes were like 2 suns that scorched everything between heaven and earth, and its body was over 1,000,000 feet in length. Each and every swipe of its claws was powerful enough to shatter mountains and split seas, and every breath it took swept through heaven and earth. All of the Tao integration stage true dragons were struck by an instinctive sense of bloodline might at the sight of the azure dragon, and their bodies recoiled involuntarily. It was as if the azure dragon before them was their paramount god, and all they could do was submit to it. This is... Bai Shui's body swayed slightly, and her features turned extremely pale. Tears welled up in Qi Yu's eyes as he gritted his teeth. How could it be the clear origin dragon? Why? That's right, the gargantuan being before them was riddled with countless wounds and its aura was extremely feeble, but it was undoubtedly the traitor of the Azure Dragon tribe who had murdered Patriarch Azure Dragon, the clear origin dragon. All of the true dragons wore expressions of grief and indignation as they prepared to unleash their killing formation. However, the clear origin dragon roared with rage, "Azure Dragon! I've already sworn eternal loyalty to the Azure Dragon tribe, and I've already surrendered to you. Why do you still insist on killing me?" A black figure flew out from the rift. Compared to the clear origin dragon, it was as insignificant as an ant. However, its aura was aloof and supreme. Its might made the true dragons unable to even think of resisting it. It was so profound and vast, so bright and grand, and it even faintly carried a transcendent aura. It was as if it could trample the entire world under its feet with just a gentle press. Oaths made by gods of creation are the most untrustworthy things, so I won't believe your surrender. I hate betrayal the most. Even if you're my best friend, I'm going to kill you today. The little black dragon whipped its tail through the air as it shot forth. An expression of shock and horror appeared on the clear origin dragon's face. It was clear that he had been tortured to an extremely sorry state by the little black dragon. If that's the case, then don't blame me for taking you down with me. The clear origin dragon roared, and divine light erupted from his body as essential power surged violently around his body. He opened his mouth, and the dragon energy within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers surged into his mouth like a vortex before being expelled again. Destroy the dragon realm. The clear origin dragon blasted forth an azure river. From the river, Unlin could even see a vast and boundless world. The great world was ruled by the powerful dragon race, and there were many other races living on it. There were mountains, rivers, oceans, a sun, a moon, and a galaxy. It contained the power of the world's origin. Unlin was shocked. The clear origin dragon was already in a frenzy to the point where he was about to hurl out his entire world in order to crush the little black dragon to death. He could sense just how terrifying this attack was. The world had transformed into an azure river of unimaginable mass and unimaginable energy. If it crashed into the Dragon Origin star without any resistance, the Dragon Origin star would most likely be blasted to smithereens. The little black dragon coldly sneered at the smashing of the entire world, his expression wild and unruly. "With just you, do you think you're worthy of taking me down with you?" It opened its mouth and spat out dark energy. At first, it was very small, but it quickly grew bigger and bigger, darker and darker. It spread forward in a fan shape, and there were countless white dots flickering in the darkness. The galaxy was endless. The clear Origin dragon spat out a world. The little black dragon spat out a boundless starry sky. Boom! Two paramount powers clashed. The entire sky instantly dimmed. The surrounding scenery slowed down, a kind of slowness that seemed to come to a standstill. After what seemed like a very long time, it also seemed like a split second had passed. The boundless starry sky began to engulf the azure river world. A large world crashed into the boundless starry sky, but it was only able to send countless ripples flying through the starry sky. No! The clear Origin dragon let loose a cry of shock and horror as the dark starry sky engulfed his body before passing through and encompassing the entire heavens. It was still daytime on the Dragon Origin star, but in the blink of an eye, the entire sky had been stained inky black by the little black dragon's starry sky, leaving only the boundless galaxy of stars shimmering in the darkness. Tranquil, ethereal, boundless and boundless. This became the atmosphere of this moment. All of the living beings looked on silently at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. The little black dragon's tiny, inky black body seemed to be trying to blend into the starry sky. It was not very eye-catching in the darkness, but all of the true dragons could sense the boundless, dazzling light radiating from its back. As for the extremely powerful clear Origin dragon, he had already been engulfed by the starry sky. Azure rain began to fall from the sky. It was as if he were sobbing. Unlin caught the raindrops, and he was struck by a sense of sorrow for some reason. He could sense the clear Origin dragon's entire life from the raindrops, as well as his pursuit of Tao. The clear Origin dragon was not like Patriarch Azure Dragon, who was blessed by the universe from birth and became an eternal holy birth. He was born as an extremely frail little snake, a little snake that could be crushed to death by any living being. But it was unyielding, it was unwilling, it did not want its life to end in such a mediocre beginning, and no one cared about it. He embarked on a journey to become more powerful by any means necessary. He could do the most despicable things for food, he could risk his life for a spirit plant, he had sold his snake eggs, he had sold his friends, he had sold his family, he had killed his teacher, he had killed himself, he had endured the most terrifying pain in this world. He transformed from a snake to a WRM, from a WRM to a dragon, and from a dragon to the Azure Dragon with the paramount bloodline. He had endured countless hardships and tribulations, but he had also encountered countless miraculous encounters. He had witnessed the most dazzling and beautiful scenery, and most importantly, he had learned of the most alluring thing in this world. That was Tao. The meaning of life was Tao. The process of pursuing Tao was the process of pursuing the true meaning of life. He was willing to give up everything for Tao. It had indeed done so. In order to advance further, it had even betrayed its best brother in the end. He was spurned by the entire dragon tribe, and his reputation was completely tarnished. He died because of his Tao. In the end, he didn't see the highest and farthest scenery, and he couldn't even find his body. Was it a failure? If he had failed, then the entire Dragon Origin star wouldn't have been covered in azure rain. No, this rain even radiated across the entire Azure Dragon star system, and then to the surrounding tens of thousands of planets, big and small, as it rained sorrowfully. Gods of creation had already attained the most essential power and possessed a certain level of transcendental power. Now that a god of creation had fallen, even the universe was weeping in grief. Is this the phenomenon that manifests when a god of creation falls? Su Xiaolan stared blankly at the rain falling from the sky, and she was struck by a sense of regret. She could also sense a hint of an essential power. This rain was useful to all super mighty figures at the Tao integration pinnacle stage. Some of them would be more resolute in their Tao hearts. Some of them would be able to peer through the rain to witness the scenes of a god of creation. Some of them would even be able to awaken a brand new Tao. What did Su Xiaolan see? She saw an azure dragon flying into the boundless sky. There was no end in sight. After the azure dragon expended all of its energy, it used its blood as fuel to continue onward. After its blood dried up, it used its bones and body as fuel. After its body was gone, it burned its own soul to continue onward. In the end, it had nothing left to burn. It had nothing left, so it stood at the highest point in the sky, looking down upon the mortal world. No one knew where it was, and no one cared. It looked on silently at the spectacular scenes it had never seen before, and it didn't say anything or do anything. In the end, it gradually disappeared from heaven and earth. Chapter 1899. The final scene was deeply engraved into Su Xiaolan's heart. For some reason, she was struck by a sense of unease. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but turn to Enlin, and she gripped onto Enlin's hand tightly. Enlin, what if? I'm saying, what if my cultivation base is too high and I go too far in the pursuit of Tao? You'll follow me, right? You'll stay with me, right? Enlin. This was the most devastating thing that Enlin had ever heard. She was afraid that he wouldn't be able to keep up with her? Enlin analyzed in a meaningful and heartfelt voice. Xiaolan, you know how bad *SS I am. How could someone as bad *SS as me not be able to keep up with you? Even if I really can't keep up with you, why don't you just take care of me? Su Xiaolan couldn't help but cover her mouth in laughter at Enlin's heroic words. The heaven and earth phenomena lasted for an entire 2 hours. Almost all of the dragon tribe living beings were experiencing the blessings of the clear origin dragon's death. The little black dragon was also high up in the sky, allowing the azure raindrops to fall upon its body without any reaction. No one knew whether it was thinking about something or experiencing the blessings of the clear origin dragon's death. After the rain stopped, a very beautiful rainbow stretched across the sky, connecting the two ends of the earth. Enlin was even struck by the feeling that the rainbow before his eyes was not a rainbow, but rather a vibrant rainbow dragon that was displaying its most beautiful form to the world. The little black dragon slowly descended from the sky. All of the dragons on the Sea of Lightning bowed in salute. Welcome back, Patriarch Azure Dragon. Welcome back, Patriarch Azure Dragon. Voices of excitement and elation erupted throughout the entire heaven and earth. Father! Papa! The two little azure dragons' eyes were filled with tears as they yelled in unison. The little black dragon flew over and cradled the two little azure dragons in his arms. My God! Look at my babies, you've grown so much in just a few tens of thousands of years. Whoa, Daddy! I thought you were going to leave us again after we finally got to see each other. The female azure dragon opened her claws and hugged the little black dragon in front of her tightly. Of course not. The little black dragon wore a gentle expression. Good job, Dad, for you to be able to successfully kill the dragon murderer. I could tell that the clear origin dragon was looking at me and my sister a long time ago. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to hide in the dragon Tao pond and cultivate. The male azure dragon waved his claws in excitement. The little black dragon stroked the male azure dragon with an enraged expression. What's with your face? Tell Father, Father will avenge you. The wound on my face. I was accidentally slapped by my dad just now. The male azure dragon explained as he covered his swollen face. The little black dragon coldly snorted and said, You still haven't recovered from such a small wound. You're really embarrassing me. The little black dragon. That's right, what are your names? The black dragon asked. You haven't given us names yet. They all say that names are given to us by our parents. Since our parents aren't around, we haven't given ourselves names yet, the female azure dragon said in a crisp voice. Everyone calls us little azure dragons, the male azure dragon explained. All right, I'll think of a good name for you. The little black dragon nodded. All right, I'll think of a good name for you. The little black dragon nodded. The reunion between father and child was a very heartwarming and touching scene. And Lin listened silently, and he almost shed tears for the two little azure dragons. After that, the little black dragon chatted with all of the Tao integration stage true dragons. The little black dragon was none other than Patriarch Azure Dragon. As for why this little black dragon was referred to as an azure dragon, Lin didn't really know. The little black dragon was none other than Patriarch Azure Dragon. As for why this little black dragon was referred to as Azure Dragon, Lin didn't really know. Perhaps it was because he had once been green? The little black dragon was Patriarch Azure Dragon. As for why this little black dragon was referred to as an azure dragon, Lin didn't know. Perhaps it was because he had once been cuckolded? The little black dragon arrived before Lin, and it was still a little black dragon around 10 feet in length. Its figure was about the same as Lin's, and its eyes were glowing with a bright light, giving it a very comfortable appearance. The little black dragon didn't unleash its bloodline pressure, and it gave off an ethereal and amiable feeling. Lin, thank you so much. If it weren't for your help and cooperation, my chances of being reborn would be extremely slim. The little black dragon bowed. The mouths of the other true dragons all gaped open in shock upon seeing this. They had lived for so long, but this was the first time they had seen Patriarch Azure Dragon bow to another living being. You're welcome, Brother Azure Dragon. I'm very happy to see you regain your freedom, so I don't mind if my stomach hurts a little. Lin smiled, but he was thinking to himself, did you hear that? You're hurting my stomach, so hurry up and make it up to me. The little black dragon chortled with glee upon hearing this. Mr. Lin, I'm truly blessed to have met you. We didn't communicate much at the time, but we were able to work together in unison and successfully overturn the Clear Origin Dragon's scheme. Lin smiled but didn't say anything. Wasn't he going to get to the point? Did this little black dragon have such a low emotional intelligence that he didn't understand, or was he pretending not to understand? The little black dragon twisted its body. The Azure Dragon Heart Essence does favor me, but it's still been tainted by the Clear Origin Dragon's aura. I have to go refine the Azure Dragon Heart Essence right away, so I'll be taking my leave. Lin, you're my best friend, and the entire Azure Dragon tribe owes me a huge debt of gratitude. While I refine the Azure Dragon Heart Essence, you can use all of the power of the Azure Dragon tribe within a reasonable range. The little black dragon waved a paw through the air as it spoke before disappearing on the spot. No one knew where it had gone. The veins on Lin's forehead bulged. There was no actual reward. There was no actual reward. Best friend? Had it forgotten that it had almost been killed by the Clear Origin Dragon last time? To be honest, Lin really wanted to emulate Senior Qing Yuan and kill the little black dragon. Grandpa! Grandpa! Where did Daddy go? The two adorable little azure dragons ran over with curious expressions. Lin replied, he went to the heavenly kingdom. The little azure dragon was extremely excited. Where is the heavenly kingdom? Is it a very powerful place? That's right, it's a very powerful place. He can live a carefree and happy life there. Lin put on a fake smile. I want to go there too. A yearning expression appeared on the little azure dragon's face. Lin smiled. All right, I'll take you to the heavenly kingdom on the Dragon Origin Star. Within the Battle Palace, Lin used his identity as the little black dragon to access the most detailed star map. A boundless star map appeared before his eyes, which corresponded to the position of the stars in the sky. Furthermore, the star map could automatically adjust to the direction of the viewer. The The White Eyes dragon had already emerged from his sea of vital energy, and Enlin felt extremely relaxed. It was time to pay attention to the summoning of Su Xiaolan's bloodline. The summoning power emanating from Su Xiaolan's body was extremely powerful, to the extent that it could even penetrate the barrier of the Tai Chu continent. Su Xiaolan looked at the boundless star map and sensed the call of her bloodline before pointing in a certain direction. Enlin's pupils contracted slightly as he continued to adjust the star map. The direction that Su Xiaolan was pointing in was the southernmost part of the realm of stars. Could it be that the holy beast vermilion bird really was summoning her? Chapter 1900. Ms. Su Xiaolan, the direction you're heading in is where the vermilion bird tribe, one of the 4 secluded tribes of the realm of stars, is situated. They can be said to be the most arrogant tribe in the entire realm of stars. If you want to go there, you have to restrain your rage, Bai Shui said with a grave expression. The most arrogant tribe? Enlin stroked his chin and nodded in agreement. He had experienced the arrogance of the vermilion bird tribe when he went to the southern heavenly wing nation last time. This was a tribe that looked down on everyone with their nostrils and looked down on everyone. It wasn't that they were targeting anyone, it was just that in their eyes, all of the tribes here were inferior. If you can't defeat the spirit of the vermilion bird tribe, then you're trash. If you can't defeat the spirit of the vermilion bird tribe, then you're still trash. In any case, you're trash. Is this a pain in the ass? However, this was the reality that Enlin had encountered. That was the territory of the vermilion bird tribe, which had a relatively thin bloodline. If he were to go to the territory of the vermilion bird tribe, which had the richest bloodline, then wouldn't they be so arrogant? All right, I'll keep a low profile. Su Xiaolan nodded obediently. Her vermilion bird bloodline still had karma to settle, so this was the best time to resolve this karma. There's a very long distance to travel from the Dragon Sparrow tribe to the Vermilion Bird tribe's star system, and the cost of teleportation is unimaginable. We can teleport you to the Vermilion Bird tribe's territory, but it may not be a smooth journey on your way back. Hence, you have to be mentally prepared, Bai Shui continued. Enlin nodded with a solemn expression. Patriarch Azure Dragon had saved his life on several occasions, so he was very fond of the Azure Dragon tribe. In reality, the Azure Dragon tribe was very understanding and adorable, but that didn't mean that the other 3 secluded tribes were easy to get along with, especially the Vermilion Bird tribe. Even though Su Xiaolan and the Holy Vermilion Bird tribe were quite close, it was still hard to say what would happen next. A smile appeared on Bai Shui's face upon seeing that both of them were a little nervous. You don't have to worry. If something does happen, the Holy Beast Vermilion Bird should be a little wary of you. If it's not an extremely important matter, it probably won't try to harm you. Su Xiaolan hesitated momentarily before asking, How do you compare the Vermilion Bird tribe to the Azure Dragon tribe? Bai Shui replied frankly, In terms of combat prowess, the Vermilion of the Vermilion Bird tribe, we of the Vermilion Bird tribe of the Vermilion tribe is equal. However, in Milion Bird Vermilion Dragon Xiaolan Bird Vermilion of Vermilion have the Dragon tribe Azure. Why is that? Enlin was astonished. Bai Shui smiled. All of the powerful beings of the Vermilion Bird tribe have gone on vacation. They have an extremely strong sense of honor, but their collective sense of honor is extremely weak, so they won't risk their lives for a war. Enlin was enlightened upon hearing this. He didn't find the Vermilion Bird tribe's contradictory personalities to be a problem. A forlorn expression appeared on Bai Shui's face. In terms of combat prowess, our Azure Dragon tribe used to have 2 gods of creation while the Vermilion Bird tribe only has 1. However, the Clear Origin Dragon has fallen, and Patriarch Azure Dragon's holy birth has yet to be restored. The Holy Vermilion Bird has yet to recover from its injuries, but its holy birth is complete, so the Vermilion Bird tribe is the most powerful. So you're saying that the Holy Vermilion Bird is even more powerful than the Azure Dragon? Enlin's expression became even more grave. He felt like he wouldn't have been able to withstand the Azure Dragon's final breath even if he unleashed his full power, but the holy vermilion bird was even more powerful than the Azure Dragon. Don't underestimate the holy beasts. Koen-gu spoke with a scorching expression. On the surface, the three most powerful tribes in the realm of stars are the Spirit Tribe, the Star Tribe, and the Ancient Tribe, but that's because we can't be bothered to compete with them. The true most powerful beings in the realm of stars are the four holy beasts. Aside from those freaks on the Tai-Chu continent, Chi-Yu added. Koen-gu choked upon hearing this, but he still continued. The holy vermilion bird has been severely wounded, but it has a complete holy birth, so it's definitely more powerful than the average god of creation. However, we don't know exactly how much more powerful it is. At the very least, none of us have seen the vermilion bird unleash its full power. We've only seen the vermilion bird wreak havoc on gods of creation. Unlin nodded. In summary, the vermilion bird was very bad *SS, but no one knew exactly how bad *SS it was. Hopefully the vermilion bird could be a bit more friendly. Su Xiaolan had come here to express her gratitude, and she hoped that there wouldn't be any conflicts. Master Bai Shui, I have an urgent report. All of a sudden, a return to void stage winged dragon stumbled into the room. What happened? Bai Shui's expression shifted slightly. The ancient tribe army suddenly attacked Heavenly Monarch Bai Luo's soulless star and slaughtered all of the living beings on the star. Heavenly Monarch Bai Luo is enraged. The winged dragon yelled. Everyone instantly fell silent. What the hell? Bai Shui blinked in confusion. This was like two people fighting. When the situation was extremely tense, one of the people fighting suddenly hammered the strong man next to him. She couldn't understand what was going on. The soulless star is one of the 8 cultivation planets that Heavenly Monarch Bai Luo holds in high regard. Have the ancient tribe gone insane? How dare they attack the soulless star? Chi-Yu's eyes were as wide as saucers. What kind of vendetta do they have against each other? Koen-gu clicked his tongue in wonder. The winged dragon replied with an excited expression. I don't know the specifics, but according to the information provided by the ancient tribe spies, this seems to have something to do with our battle on the ice pole star. His words fell. Chi-Yu, Xingjin, Bai Shui, and the 2 little azure dragons all turned toward Koen-gu in unison. Koen-gu was the most powerful general on the ice pole star, and he was completely dumbstruck. What does this have to do with me? A thoughtful expression appeared on Enlin's face. Could this be a misunderstanding? Koen-gu's body shuddered as he also thought of this possibility. Ha ha! That's brilliant! So they mistook Mr. Enlin for a god of creation of the spirit tribe? Indeed. Heavenly Monarch Bai Luo likes to use humans as his essential body, and the power he can unleash in a human body is comparable to his own. Bai Shui's eyes lit up. I'm going to announce to the entire realm of stars right now that the Azure Dragon tribe is willing to stand with Heavenly Monarch Bai Luo in the fight against the ancient tribe. Chi-Yu chortled with glee. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. They were such good friends, so of course they had to verify their identities. 2 hours later, Heavenly Monarch Bai Luo had just suffered an unexpected disaster when he received the Azure Dragon tribe's announcement to the entire realm of stars, and an enraged roar erupted throughout heaven and earth. Ah! Why is this happening? Extreme Dao Monkey Monarch, are you AF * King Stupid C * NT? Azure Dragon Tribe, you screwed me over. Chapter 1901. Heavenly Monarch Bai Luo had somehow taken the blame for someone else. This was the most frustrating and infuriating experience he had ever experienced. The soulless star was suddenly ambushed and slaughtered. Furthermore, it was the extreme Dao Monkey Monarch himself, shattering the entire star and slaughtering over 1 billion living beings. This was a slap to the face. It was a blatant slap to Heavenly Monarch Bai Luo's face. After accomplishing this earth-shattering feat, the extreme Tao monkey monarch retreated to a star system and yelled at heavenly monarch Bei Luo with a vengeance. You killed my son on the ice pole star and defeated my ancient tribe army, so I'm going to destroy one of your planets today. If you're not convinced, then let's fight again. And then, heavenly monarch Bei Luo really did come. Extreme Tao monkey king, you idiot, you don't even know that you've been used. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo was enraged, and his golden soul power surged forth to encompass the entire divine emperor star. Idiot? How dare you call me an idiot? I'll kill you! The extreme Tao monkey king roared in anger. The terrifying sound waves shook the sky as if they were going to explode. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo's flesh crawled. This guy's comprehension ability was like this? That was why he looked down on the ancient, desolate race. What kind of simple-minded people were they? You don't even know how to focus on the main point. At this moment, the Monkey King's fist had already arrived in front of him. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo cursed in his heart as he circulated his soul power to block the extreme Tao monkey monarch's fist. The extreme Tao monkey monarch's fists were imbued with extreme power, but heavenly monarch Bei Luo's soul power was nothing to scoff at either. As the two forces collided, a golden blue energy ring exploded in the starry sky. An earth-shattering battle broke out just like that. As heavenly monarch Bei Luo fought, he explained that he hadn't done anything to the ice pole star. I'm still cultivating on my own planet, but the blame is already on me. No one would feel good about this. He had already thought of what to do. First, he would let the stupid monkey realize his mistake, and then he would violently beat the stupid monkey up. Only then would it be satisfying. However, the extreme Tao monkey monarch completely ignored heavenly monarch Bei Luo's explanation. I won't listen, I won't listen, I won't listen. You're quibbling and shirking your responsibility. Do you think you can fool me like this? Do you really think I'm an idiot? The extreme Tao monkey king roared as he fought. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo felt like throwing up a mouthful of blood. Originally, stupid C*NT was just a word used to express one's emotions, but now he felt that there was nothing wrong with using it on the Monkey King. This battle lasted for an entire day. In the end, heavenly monarch Bei Luo was lightly injured, and the extreme Tao monkey monarch was severely injured. The extreme Tao monkey monarch reluctantly believed heavenly monarch Bei Luo's words and agreed to a truce. Actually, he had been beaten into submission. Ever since heavenly monarch Bei Luo obtained the core power of the spirit patriarch, his power had increased drastically. Heavenly monarch Shi Ling was originally the most powerful of the four heavenly monarchs, but now, he had to relinquish his position. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo sat on his throne with a frosty expression. Haha, truce? You destroyed one of my planets and you want to let it go? Dream on. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo was only trying to stall for time. He still had something very important to do, and that was to ferret out the mastermind behind the scenes. He could not stand this injustice. I'd like to see who has the guts to actually dare to provoke me. I don't care who they are, I'm going to teach them that the most powerful being of our spirit tribe, heavenly monarch Bei Luo, is not someone they can mess with. The man harumphed coldly before slowly disappearing into the starry sky. At this moment, on a neighboring Dragon Horse star system, which was still under the control of the Azure Dragon tribe, there were a total of 5 planets orbiting this star. There was even one planet that could sustain life, and that was the Heavenly Cloud Star. The reason why it was named the Heavenly Cloud Star was because its land was a soft white, just like the clouds in the sky. During the day, due to the special structure of the rock and soil layer, it would emit a faint fluorescence after absorbing sunlight. From an extremely far away, this planet was as beautiful as a pearl. The Heavenly Cloud Star was the core port of the Azure Dragon tribe, and it was also the core teleportation location. There were a total of 30,000 direct spatial teleportation channels. Anlin and Su Xiaolan had also come to this planet as they were going to the Vermilion Bird territory. The teleportation to the Vermilion Bird territory requires a large amount of energy, and it will take around 3 days. I'll have to trouble you to wait patiently during this time. Kuan-gu twisted his massive body as he spoke in a respectful voice. By Xuan-chi you couldn't leave the Dragon Origin Star, so Kuan-gu was in charge of the teleportation. No problem. Anlin smiled. I'll just accompany Xiaolan for a stroll around this planet. Kuan-gu looked at the two of them with a hint of envy in his eyes. They were a perfect couple, and they looked so harmonious as they stood hand in hand. What a perfect couple! Anlin and Su Xiaolan saw many different teleportation spell formations that flashed incessantly. There were dragon tribe cultivators arriving and departing, as well as beings of other tribes arriving and departing. He could even see a series of gargantuan dragons dragging boxes of unimaginably large cargo through space. This was one of the characteristics of this planet. Anlin held onto Su Xiaolan's soft, and delicate hand as they strolled around the planet, appreciating the scenery around them. Each planet had its own unique characteristic. The Ice Pole Star was pure and flawless, while the Dragon Origin Star was fraught with peril and despair, but it was also a spectacular sight to behold. As for the Heavenly Cloud Star, it gave off the feeling that it was a white, soft, and extremely busy planet. White and soft was the essence of this planet. Extremely busy was also the essence of the living beings on this planet. There were hundreds of millions of living beings on this planet, and all of them were porters. Apparently, this was one of the most respected porters in the entire realm of stars. There were even Return to Void stage mighty figures who worked here, and they were very proud of it. There are so many teleportation spell formations here. I've never seen so many teleportation spell formations in my life. Anlin sighed with emotion as he looked at the flashing light and the spatial fluctuations emanating from the planet. The principle of space teleportation was to open up the closest stable chaotic passageway between two spatial coordinates, allowing things to be propelled by energy in the shortest possible distance and cross space. With a good chaotic passageway, objects could even travel faster than the speed of light, which was much more convenient than Return to Void stage mighty figures tearing open spatial passageways with their bare hands and having to evade the chaotic turbulence from time to time. To put it in perspective, this was the difference between a person walking on a mountain road and a person riding on a high-speed train. The two of them held hands as they traveled, experiencing the different cultures of different planets and enjoying the different magnificent sceneries. They had a great time. 3 days passed by in a flash. It was finally time to teleport to the Vermilion Bird tribe territory. 3 moons hung high in the sky. The two of them were making their way back when they encountered a man in a black robe. A smile appeared on the man's face. "I've finally found you." Chapter 1902. Anlin and Su Xiaolan's footsteps faltered as they turned to look at the man up ahead with a hint of suspicion in their eyes. The man lifted his hat to reveal a head of long, beautiful blue hair that fell to his shoulders. His handsome face had a pair of pure and clear black eyes, and his skin was as translucent and pristine as jade. Anlin stared at him for a moment to find that he was a complete stranger, but at the same time, he was struck by a strange sense of familiarity. "Who are you?" Anlin asked. The man didn't answer. Instead, he looked at Anlin and Su Xiaolan with a smile. A man and a woman, one at the Return to Void pinnacle stage and the other at the Tao integration pinnacle stage. "I can't believe that my son died by your hands. If it weren't for the fact that I forcefully searched the souls of several Return to Void stage winged dragons, I wouldn't have been able to find out that you two were responsible for this. What are you talking about?" Su Xiaolan was perplexed, and she had already placed a hand on her scabbard. He. The man chuckled before suddenly disappearing into the night sky. Anlin and Su Xiaolan both faltered upon seeing this. The night sky was littered with stars. 3 bright moons were situated in different directions in the night sky, casting down silvery white light. The cold moonlight shone down upon the earth. The surroundings became quiet. He left? Su Xiaolan was a little perplexed. Anlin's expression was grave. Don't get complacent. Our enemy is not to be underestimated. He was able to sneak up on us and even leave without us noticing. Even if he used some kind of mystic technique, he's still. Before he had a chance to finish his sentence, a voice filled with boundless might erupted throughout the entire heavenly cloud star. Anlin, Su Xiaolan, you two plotted to lure the ancient tribe into our spirit tribe territory and destroy our soulless star. Do you really think your plan was flawless? I'm going to kill you today. Remember my name. I am Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. The voice was boundlessly powerful, and it shocked all living beings on the heavenly cloud star. It's Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Su Xiaolan's expression shifted. She had naturally heard of Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Aside from being the scapegoat, this Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had also slain Heavenly Monarch Shi Ling and plotted to kill the Spirit Patriarch. Anlin raised his head to look at the sky. He thought to himself, we've already met before. What can't we say face to face? Did he have to fly into the sky just to say something awesome in the sky? But soon, he felt that something was wrong. 3 bright moons hung high in the sky. However, one of the moons was getting bigger and bigger in his field of vision. Anlin's eyes widened as a very bad feeling welled up in his heart. No, it can't be. Su Xiaolan was also shocked. She looked at the moon in the sky, which was getting bigger and bigger. The moon grew bigger and bigger in his field of vision. In the end, it covered half the sky. When it rubbed against the atmosphere, it ignited into flames, like a meteor falling from the sky to destroy the world. Anlin looked up at the apocalyptic scene, and he took a deep breath. Did Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo F** King throw the moon down from the sky? There were 3 moons of different sizes in the night sky of the heavenly cloud star. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had very considerately tossed the largest moon toward Anlin. That's right, the location where the moon was crashing down was exactly where Anlin was standing. The moon was also imbued with paramount soul power, thereby enhancing its power. If the entire moon were to fall, the entire heavenly cloud star would definitely be pulverized. All of the living beings on the heavenly cloud star panicked and fled for their lives, but they didn't know where to go. If the moon were to fall like that, was there any place on this planet that was safe? A small number of powerful beings could still fly and run, but most of the living beings that couldn't even fly had already collapsed to the ground, and some of them used teleportation spell formations to escape. Despair enshrouded the entire planet. Koen Gu was originally quite elated to finally set up the teleportation spell formation, and he was just waiting for Anlin and Su Xiaolan to arrive. However, Anlin and Su Xiaolan didn't arrive. Instead, they were greeted by the sight of the moon. Holy F***ck. Why did Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo chase us all the way here? We're all going to die. Koen Gu's expression was filled with despair. They had thought that Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo would discover that Anlin was responsible for all of this, but they didn't think that he would come so quickly and in such a vicious manner. All of the living beings on the planet fell into despair. Never would they have thought that the moon that had hovered peacefully in the sky for so long would fall from the sky one day, and in such a vicious manner. There were also many Return to Void stage mighty figures who attacked the falling moon with all their might. However, the moon was enshrouded within a layer of extremely powerful soul power, and their attacks were unable to even break through the membrane around the moon. It's over, that was the only thought in everyone's mind. The moon fell too abruptly, and it didn't even have time to activate the spell formation around the planet. Anlin looked up at the scenes unfolding before him, and a song suddenly appeared in his mind. I want to pluck the stars for you, I want to pluck the moon for you, I want to pluck the sun for you, I want to give you everything you want. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was the first person to pluck the moon for him. His heart was filled with complex emotions. Enormous energy pressure descended. The moon hadn't even completely crashed into the ground, but the earth was already crumbling. Just as everyone was in complete despair, a crisp sword-ringing erupted for tens of thousands of kilometers. A woman in a jade dress charged toward the falling moon without any hesitation, and her sword lashed out like a dragon. A blue lightning sword projection flashed through the sky for over 30,000 kilometers, as if it were a galactic dragon, instantly illuminating the entire planet. Su Xiaolan had sprung into action. She wielded her dragon sparrow sword, and there was no hint of fear on her face. Instead, there was a hint of excitement on her face as she slashed down viciously upon the falling moon. The extremely pure and profound lightning might was imbued with her paramount observation in the Tao of the true dragon, and it tore through the barrier around the moon. Then, with irresistible force, the entire moon was slashed by this azure lightning sword, slicing it into two like butter. Kuan Gu's eyes widened. It was sliced open? One had to realize that this was an attack imbued with the power of Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. The gap between the Tao integration stage and the God of Creation stage was as massive as an insurmountable chasm, but Su Xiaolan was able to bridge this gap without using any external power? In the sky, the huge moon, which was burning with raging flames and bringing with it the power to destroy the world, was cut neatly into two halves. Lightning was still wreaking havoc on its surface. All of the living beings present were stunned by this sword projection. However, this was not the end. The kinetic energy imbued by the moon was far too terrifying, and it continued to plummet after being sliced in half, transforming into two doomsday meteorites. If they continued to fall like this, the heavenly cloud star would be doomed. Phew! A faint blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's face as a hint of a smile appeared on her face. The dragon sparrow sword in her hand flipped through the air, and a dragon opened its eyes within the blade. Lightning Dragon Tear. Whoosh! Countless bolts of lightning suddenly extended from the incision like a spiderweb, enshrouding the two halves of the moon. The bolts of lightning were like countless sabers of light, instantly shattering the moon into countless pieces. Bam bam bam! A meteor shower instantly began to fall from the sky. Unlin waved a hand through the air upon seeing this, and a gust of wind blew for tens of thousands of kilometers, annihilating all of the debris. A scolding expression appeared on his face. Don't throw rocks everywhere. It's not good to hit any flowers or plants. Su Xiaolan turned with a smile. You're responsible for cleaning up after me. Unlin nodded. Every successful woman has a strong man silently supporting them. A thought seemed to have occurred to Su Xiaolan, and a blush appeared on her face. You're so naughty. Thus, the threat of the moon falling on the heavenly cloud star was resolved as the two of them conversed. Chapter 1903. The heavenly cloud star had only just fallen into despair when they discovered that the moon, which was powerful enough to crush them, had completely disappeared before their eyes. Which top-rate mighty figure had intervened? Many powerful beings finally turned toward a certain direction, where there were two petite figures. They were humans. Wait, since when had a human powerful enough to oppose Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo? Just as everyone was in shock and bewilderment, Unlin and Su Xiaolan had already risen into the sky toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had wanted to toss a few more moons at Unlin and Su Xiaolan, but he could only give up after seeing that they were already flying toward him. She's only at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, but she was able to break through my essential power with the power of a true dragon. Is this woman a human or a dragon? Does she have some powerful force backing her? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's brows furrowed as a hint of wariness welled up in his heart. He looked at the white-robed man in the distance, and the wariness in his heart deepened. No matter how he looked at it, that B***starred was only at the return to void pinnacle stage, but the power he was displaying was clearly not at the return to void stage. Strange, this was way too strange. Who are you? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo repressed his rage with a dark expression. He did want to exact revenge, but he wasn't an idiot who would just charge in without asking any questions. He preferred to study things thoroughly before making his move at lightning speed and settling the matter with a single strike. The power displayed by these two people was worthy of his caution. Then, a fist appeared in front of him. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Bam! An enormous power crashed down without any reservation. The space within a radius of several hundred kilometers was shattered by the residual power of the fist. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was blasted flying for over 10,000 kilometers. It's impolite not to reciprocate. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo gifted me a moon, and I'll return you a loving fist. Unlin slowly withdrew his fist with a smile on his face. Over 10,000 kilometers away. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo stopped in his tracks and looked at Unlin as he massaged his blushing cheek. I was too careless. I had been paying close attention to Su Xiaolan this entire time, and I thought you were at the Dao integration pinnacle stage at most. That hurts. Unlin's expression changed slightly. He had unleashed all of the power of his phenomenal success stage body of the war god in that punch, but his opponent was only slightly hurt? The other party's skin didn't even break, right? A true god of creation truly lived up to his reputation. Unlin pondered for a moment, then flew in another direction with a whoosh. Su Xiaolan hurriedly followed behind Unlin. He, trying to escape? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo stepped forward, and his body disappeared into the spatial ripples. In the next instant, he appeared behind Unlin. In almost the blink of an eye, he had traversed a distance of 10,000 miles. You're very strong, but compared to me, you're just slightly bigger, and if you don't tell me where you came from, don't blame me for killing you. A cold and ethereal voice reverberated through outer space. Unlin and Su Xiaolan had no intention of running away. On the contrary, they were looking forward to a battle. However, they didn't want to do it here. Instead, they wanted to do it on the neighboring heavenly cloud star, the Steel Mountain Star. After all, if they were to battle on the heavenly cloud star, what if the shock waves from their battle destroyed the teleportation spell formation and they couldn't get to the Vermilion Bird Tribe territory? You want to know where I come from? Alright, I'll tell you. Unlin immediately tried to stall for time. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's killing intent subsided slightly upon hearing this, but he still followed closely behind Unlin. 1 minute later. Are you going to King tell me or not? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo flared up with rage. I'll tell you. Unlin flew forward as he spoke. We come from the most powerful sect in the Kuan Su universe, the 4-9 Immortal Sect. I'm a core disciple of the sect leader, and I'm telling you, if you hit me, my master will never let you off the hook. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's expression shifted slightly upon hearing this. He seemed to have heard this information from the other Return to Void stage winged dragons when he was searching for information about them. If what Unlin said was true, then a core disciple of the 4-9 Immortal Sect was already this powerful. If he really did get on their bad side, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was hesitating. Unlin might not be telling the truth. But what if he was telling the truth? It was always better to be safe than sorry. These two powerful beings were both very unfamiliar to him, and it was very strange for them to suddenly appear here. What if they really had come from an alternate universe to carry out some kind of mission? If he killed Unlin, would Unlin's master be enraged by this and descend upon the realm of stars before hanging him up and beating him up? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo became more and more nervous as he thought about this. Even though he was feeling very aggrieved, he felt like Unlin hadn't done this on purpose. This was a complete misunderstanding. He was a god of creation, a high and mighty spirit tribe heavenly monarch, so how could he not tolerate even a small mistake from Unlin? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo felt relieved. The extreme Dao Monkey Monarch was the one who deserved to die the most. If it weren't for the fact that the extreme Dao Monkey Monarch was too stupid and thought that he was Unlin, how could the soulless star have been massacred? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's mind was filled with many thoughts, and he even slowed down a little in his pursuit. Enlin continued with his threats, "Don't doubt me. You can tell that my cultivation base is only at the return to void pinnacle stage. However, you know just how powerful I am, right? Do you think any sect in this small realm of stars would be able to nurture a freak like me?" Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo thought about it and realized that there really wasn't. Truth be told, there are 10,000 other powerful beings like me in my 4-9 immortal sect. Enlin yelled as he unleashed his vacuum voice transmission technique. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's body shuddered, and he drew a sharp intake of breath. Enlin patted Su Xiaolan's shoulder and added fuel to the fire. "Even she is only my servant. She's at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, and even a god of creation can't crush her. What AF * king disgrace." He had just added fuel to the fire, and he had been burned as well. Enlin felt a spasm in his waist, as if he had been electrocuted. He turned his head and saw that the green-clothed woman was glaring at him angrily, causing the words that he had spoken to turn cold. Enlin was dead, but Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was beyond astonished. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo really wanted to turn around and leave, but a thought suddenly flashed through his mind, and a bold idea occurred to him. Who was the pinnacle of the Tao? The path to the Tao was a place of both risk and opportunity. In this boundless realm of stars, God of creation births with holy births were the pinnacle of cultivation bases, and even he didn't know what to do next. However, if this man really did come from the 4-9 immortal sect, then there was a very good chance that he possessed an inheritance beyond the God of creation stage. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's breathing accelerated. After killing Enlin, I'll search his soul and take all of his core inheritances. After that, I'll continue to cultivate, and I'll be the most powerful being in the realm of stars in the future. From the fact that Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo dared to trap Heavenly Monarch Shi Ling and kill the Spirit Patriarch, it was clear that he was a very aggressive and adventurous being. As soon as he thought of this, he couldn't suppress it anymore. Enlin's inheritance, I really want it. Chapter 1904. Enlin's hair stood on end from Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's stare. Why did this **starred look like he was going to eat him? He had just used his trump card, and now there were **king side effects? Thankfully, they had already entered the range of the Steel Mountain Star. The Steel Mountain Star was an extremely hostile planet with almost no life forms. The daily temperature was close to 1,000 degrees, and the terrain was also very unique. There were tall mountains constructed from steel all over the planet, each of which was several thousand feet tall. There were also a series of scorching red rivers flowing through the mountains, all of which were formed from molten steel and possessed extremely terrifying temperatures. There's no need to worry about the flowers and plants here. A smile appeared on Enlin's face. He wasn't used to space battles, so land battles were more suitable for him. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had also detected Enlin's intentions, and he harumphed coldly. "You're about to die, yet you still have the time to care about the lives of other living beings. You think you can kill me?" Enlin chortled with glee as he clenched his fists and unleashed the power of his phenomenal success stage body of the war god before unleashing an almighty punch toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo spread open his hands, and a blue soul power crystal shield instantly materialized before him, which stacked on top of one another and reflected the starlight in the sky. Boom! The fist crashed into the soul power crystal shield, making it tremor slightly, but it didn't crack open. "Do you think you can hurt me now that I'm on my guard?" Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo chuckled coldly as he pushed the crystal shield with one hand and gripped the air with his other hand. Boundless blue soul power materialized into a spear that was violently hurled toward Enlin. Star of Slaughter, Infinite Holy Soul Spear. The spear fell like a blue shooting star. Boundless killing intent seemed to be trying to congeal the surrounding space. Not only did Enlin sense an extremely powerful restrictive force, but he could also sense that he had been locked onto by an invisible force. This was a type of karma lock, and no matter where he hid, the spear would have to stab into his body. Otherwise, the spear wouldn't stop. This spear was the most powerful homing missile in the realm of stars. It's just a simple power of karma. As long as I'm powerful enough, there's no karma that can't be broken. Enlin unleashed another normal attack toward the spear. Boom! Just as the fist energy shot out, the spear actually disappeared without a trace. Enlin's complexion changed drastically. Just as he was about to turn around, the long spear behind him had already stabbed him in the back. Not only could this gun track, but it could also use extremely agile space jumps to avoid attacks. A piercing pain came from behind as the blue spear stabbed into Enlin's back, pushing Enlin forward. If it didn't pierce through Enlin's body, its power would never dissipate. After attaining the phenomenal success stage of the body of the war god, it already possessed a hint of eternity and immortality. Theoretically speaking, not only its strength, but even its defensive prowess had also reached an extremely fearsome level. However, a cry still sounded from behind him. This was a sign that his body was unable to withstand the ravaging power. Soul-type source power. Enlin gritted his teeth. His body was being pushed by the spear, and his skin was already showing signs of cracking. He was just about to unleash his power when a powerful aura suddenly swept toward him from up ahead. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had already appeared before him, and his index finger was imbued with extremely rich essential power as he pointed a finger toward Enlin. "You're the one who killed all living beings on the soulless star, so you should die with them." Enlin was struck by an unprecedented sense of peril as Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's index finger drew closer and closer. At this moment, the cry of a dragon sparrow bird suddenly erupted from beside him. A woman in a jade dress flew through the air like an azure dragon. The woman wielded her dragon sparrow sword, with lightning roaring and scorching flames incinerating the air. She was even faster than Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's attack, and there was even an azure dragon imbued within her sword that crashed into Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's side, knocking him flying. Enlin took advantage of this opportunity to unleash the 7 holy flames within his body at the same time, which enveloped the blue spear behind him before incinerating it in a frenzy. Soon, the spear melted and evaporated within the boundless holy flames. The flesh on his back had also been punctured, but it didn't completely puncture his body. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's eyes narrowed upon seeing this. "Is your defenses really that terrifying? I unleashed an attack with my complete essential power, but you only sustained a superficial wound. What kind of body is this? It clearly hasn't been nourished by essential power, however. My essential power is like bone gangrene that you won't be able to completely remove. Once the wound is torn open, it will spread through your entire body, destroying your organs and causing your entire body to rot to death." His voice had only just fallen when he saw the gash on Enlin's back heel at a rate discernible to the naked eye in the next second. His skin became smooth and smooth again. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Holy F***ck. How did he recover so quickly? So be it if his defenses were immensely powerful, but his regenerative abilities were also immensely powerful? Not only that, but his essential power had also been erased by a certain power within Enlin's body? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo felt like he had underestimated his opponent again. Enlin cracked his neck from side to side with a smile on his face. His evergreen technique had already been perfected, and its life force was so powerful that even he was fearful of it. Power of the Spirit God, activate. Boom. Blue essential power suddenly erupted from Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's body, and his aura soared explosively once again as he hurtled toward Enlin at an extremely terrifying speed. This was a speed even faster than lightning. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before Enlin. He didn't unleash any more flashy technique. Instead, he unleashed a mundane punch toward Enlin. Enlin was struck by a sense of extreme horror, but his battle intent surged explosively, and he instantly repressed this fear as he unleashed all of his power to unleash a punch toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Bam! The clash of power was the simplest and most violent one. The power that had been condensed to the extreme even created a black hole at the center of their clash. Enlin felt an overwhelming power tearing through his entire body. This power targeted his body, his consciousness, his Tao, and all other types of energy. PFFF! Enlin felt as if all of his organs had been torn apart, and he threw up a mouthful of blood as his body plummeted toward the Steel Mountain star at an extremely high speed, leaving a massive crater in the ground. How could the power of one's consciousness be this powerful? Enlin was astonished. He was sure that Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo hadn't used any other power other than the power of his consciousness to attack Enlin's face. However, this attack was even more powerful than the infinite Holy Soul Spear that Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had hurled. The Great Tao was extremely simple, and it could be seen from this punch. It was a simple punch, but it wasn't targeted at anyone, but it was targeted at everything. It was effective against everything, and it was a fatal effect. Enlin was severely wounded by that punch, and he had only just crawled up from the ground when Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo charged toward his face with all his might. F***ck off. Don't think that you're the only one who's good at melee combat. Enlin let loose an enraged roar, and a golden ring began to appear behind him, rotating relentlessly. He knew that his body alone would be unable to withstand his opponent's soul power attack. Hence, he decided to give himself a buff. 5 Elemental Body Activate. Chapter 1905. Enlin instantly entered his 5 Elemental Body, and his surroundings suddenly became clearer to him. Even the trajectory of Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's fists was instantly analyzed. The 5 Elemental Body was the evolved version of the 7 Holy Flames, and it contained the power of the 5 elements. However, in terms of explosive power, it was at least 5 times more powerful than the 7 Holy Flames. Enlin thrust his left palm forward and struck Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's fist with unerring accuracy. A terrifying power surged into his left palm, and his left arm instantly bulged as if it were about to explode from the immense power. However, the power of the 5 elements was activated, and it quickly engulfed the power of Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's fist like a bottomless abyss. What? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's expression shifted. At this moment, Enlin's right palm had already struck Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's chin. The ring rotated, and the most powerful power of the 5 elements converged toward his palm. Bam! Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's chin was crushed. His entire body was sent spiraling into the sky by an indescribably terrifying power. Enlin stepped forward, and the steel ground caved in again from his power. He flew into the sky at an incredible speed and instantly appeared before Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo before launching a fist toward his head. Don't get too cocky. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's hair stood on end as his essential soul power erupted forth, and he made a divine seal with one hand before crashing down toward Enlin's heart like lightning. Spirit God Archaic Seal. Enlin didn't evade, and his fist continued to strike Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's face, flattening his head. At the same time, Enlin's chest caved in from the pressure of the divine seal, and his heart was instantly pulverized. Bam! 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 Both of them were severely wounded as they flew through the air, crashing into several steel mountains in succession before finally coming to a halt. In the eyes of all living beings, these steel mountains were no different from normal mountains in the eyes of these two. In any case, they were like tofu that couldn't even withstand a collision. Pwah! Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo threw up a mouthful of spiritual power. His face had caved in like the bottom of a pot, and he had to slap his face vigorously to restore it to its original state. The golden halo behind Enlin rotated quickly, An extremely pure and profound power of the five elements surged through his entire body. The wounds on his chest and heart were completely healed in just a few seconds. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's eyes narrowed upon seeing this. Your body is even more fearsome than the extreme Dao monkey monarchs. He looked at the golden ring behind Enlin with a hint of apprehension in his eyes. He discovered that he was unable to decipher the mystery behind this golden ring. 5 different divine seals appeared in 5 different directions of the ring, releasing a frightening divine light. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo could sense that these 5 divine seals were interconnected, and they were imbued with the truth of the cycle of heaven and earth. There was a very special power surging over them, and it was as if no power could destroy the stable structure of this power. Heaved a heave Luo Monarch, Heavenly Lin, the divine and mental god, King Bei Luo Powerful, and Ming God, King Ming. That small vortex struck him with a sense of extreme peril. This technique shouldn't exist in this world. What a terrifying inheritance! Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was not fearful of Enlin's power. Instead, he became even more greedy. He was confident that he could crush Enlin and obtain Enlin's badass inheritance. Whoosh! Lightning revolved around Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's body, and he flashed toward Enlin like a bolt of lightning. His hands transformed into countless different forms, and he instantly unleashed over 10,000 punches toward Enlin. With his 5 elemental body activated, Enlin was able to instantly predict all of Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's attacks, and he was able to retaliate. Enlin also instantly unleashed over 10,000 attacks. His hands were as tough as the hardest metal, and his attacks were imbued with boundless power. Not only was he able to nullify Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's attacks to perfection, but he was also able to retaliate with all of his attacks. Boom 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 boom. Enlin and Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's clash caused the Steel Mountain star to tremor violently, and all of the steel mountains within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers were flattened by the shockwaves from their clash. The two of them were like invincible bulldozers, flattening everything in their path. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's sole essential power could destroy all things, including Enlin's body of the immortal war god. Enlin's 5 elemental body was a new power created by fusing the 5 elements, and it could also break through Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's essential power and wound his spirit body. Boom! Enlin's left chest was punctured in a moment of carelessness. Ha ha! Very good. He chortled with glee as he stabbed a finger toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's glabella, puncturing Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's temple. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo let loose a pained groan, and his body flew backward. Enlin was just about to give chase when he discovered that Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's leg had already lashed toward his waist like a whip. Boom! Enlin's body was smashed into the side, and he was sent flying for hundreds of thousands of meters. The shock waves from that kick sent a blue soul power surging for over 10,000 kilometers, reducing hundreds of steel mountains in its path to dust. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo heaved a light sigh of relief at the sight of Enlin's disappearing figure. Before he had a chance to come to his senses, he heard a burst of raucous laughter reverberating beside his ears, and the space around him instantly twisted and cracked from the scorching heat. Up above, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo raised his head to discover Enlin looking down at him with a sinister smile on his face. His fist was imbued with 5 different colors, but the 5 colors suddenly transformed into an extremely rich crimson color. 5 elemental scorching god. The fist fell from the sky, and scorching temperatures even more terrifying than the sun erupted forth, incinerating everything around it into nothingness. Even Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's spirit body began to churn involuntarily. Boom! An extremely dazzling sun rose up on the Steel Mountain star. The steel earth turned into boiling molten steel, turning into a yellow and white ocean. Enlin, you have a death wish. The sea of molten steel exploded. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's bald head rose into the air before pouncing toward Enlin again. Enlin laughed heartily without any fear as he charged forward again. Their battle erupted once again, destroying everything around them. Enlin felt as if the blood in his entire body was boiling, and every single cell in his body was breathing with elation. His bones, flesh, and blood were unleashing their full power. That's right, he had unleashed all of his power, and there was someone who could withstand all of it. His body of the war god was very resistant, and Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's spirit body was also very resistant. His 5 elemental body was extremely violent, and Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's power of the spirit god was also extremely powerful. His regenerative abilities were extremely terrifying, and Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's spirit body was also extremely powerful. Both of them were unleashing their full power from the get-go, but they were still evenly matched. Ha ha! This is awesome! Enlin chortled with glee, and each and every one of his fists was imbued with the power of a hydrogen bomb, creating a series of miniature suns. F*CK, you're a F*King Maniac! An enraged expression appeared on Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's face as he kept Enlin's attacks at bay while retaliating with all his might. The god of creation stage Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was the ideal opponent for Enlin to test his own power against. This was an extremely satisfying battle for Enlin. Chapter 1906. Su Xiaolan stood high up in the sky and looked down at the battle taking place on the ground below. Violent energy swept her long black hair into the air, and her jade barley ink garment blossomed like an azure lotus in the sky. She had initially planned to assist Enlin, but she discovered that Enlin was having a great time, and if she were to rush over to assist him, she would most likely ruin Enlin's mood. It was a rare occasion that Enlin was having such a good time, so Su Xiaolan naturally wasn't going to do something like ruin his mood. She merely held her dragon sparrow sword and stood guard around the Steel Mountain Star for Enlin. All living beings below the God of Creation stage were to be killed without mercy. Beep, 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 Su Xiaolan's azure dragon jade pendant suddenly began to flash. This was her guardian deity token, and only guardian deities could communicate with one another. She accepted the jade pendant with a smile. Hello, what's up? Ms. Su Xiaolan, how's your battle with Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo? We've already sent 8 Dao Integration Stage True Dragons to provide reinforcements. If worse comes to worst, you can self-detonate your identity as a guardian deity of the Azure Dragon tribe. Bai Shue's urgent voice sounded from the jade pendant. A surge of warmth welled up in Su Xiaolan's heart upon hearing this. Bai Shue knew that Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was an extremely dangerous being, and no amount of reinforcements would be able to save him. However, she was still willing to send 8 top-rate reinforcements. She really did view her as family. Don't worry about us, big sister Bai Shue. Haven't you noticed that I'm talking to you in an unhurried manner? Su Xiaolan said. That's right. Bai Shue faltered slightly before asking, what's your current situation? Su Xiaolan was brimming with confidence. Everything is under control. I don't even need to do anything. Enlin can take care of everything. Gasp! Bai Shue was astonished. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo possessed the power of the most powerful being in the spirit tribe, but Enlin was able to oppose him on his own? Was there anyone in this world who could stop him? Perhaps only the holy beasts in the sage position could suppress him. Bai Shue couldn't help but ask, so you don't need reinforcements? No need, Su Xiaolan said. In reality, she didn't have much hope in a Dao Integration Stage True Dragon. After witnessing Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's true power, she felt like unless the guardian deity-level true dragons of the Azure Dragon tribe came to reinforce them, the rest of the true dragons wouldn't be able to do much. Not only would they be unable to help, but they would also be sacrificed for no reason. Su Xiaolan wasn't an emotionless and ruthless person. She couldn't bear to see her friends from the Azure Dragon clan die in this battle. Sister Bai Shue, wait for our good news. Su Xiaolan smiled. All right. Bai Shui heaved a faint sigh before instructing, be careful, all of the gods of creation will unleash unimaginably terrifying power in the face of dire straits. Su Xiaolan was well aware of this. Back when the clear origin dragon was in dire straits, he had tossed a great world toward Patriarch Azure Dragon. Even though Patriarch Azure Dragon had nullified that power, a weaker god of creation would most likely have been crushed to death in the face of that power. At this moment, on the heavenly cloud star, the hundreds of millions of living beings began to flee for their lives. They had seen Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo and the two powerful beings of the human race battle from the outskirts of the Heavenly Cloud Star to the Steel Mountain Star, and they knew that Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was a merciful and compassionate being. However, this didn't affect their decision to run away. What if the two of them ended up fighting their way back to the Heavenly Cloud Star? This kind of top-level battle in the star field was not a joke. The aftermath of the battle was so terrifying that it was impossible to predict what would happen in the next second. One moment of enjoyment, but the whole family would be cremated. That's right, if they continued to spectate under these circumstances, they would lose their lives. Looking up from the Heavenly Cloud Star, the Steel Mountain Star was normally a massive silvery gray dot that was even larger than the average star. However, looking up from the distance now, the massive dot was flashing in a frenzy, and all of the living beings present were trembling with fear upon seeing this. This wasn't a blinking star, it felt like a star was about to explode. They knew that this was the result of a clash between God of Creation's stage super mighty figures. Just how massive of a collision of energy would it have to be for them to be able to detect it from so far away? They didn't dare to think about it, nor did they dare to ask. All they could do was use the teleportation spell formation to escape from this terrifying star system. At this moment, on the Steel Mountain Star. This was a planet constructed from steel. The planet that had been extremely confident in its own body was now riddled with countless holes. The battle had already reached a climax. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's entire body was enshrouded in a boundless sea of soul power, and after taking Enlin's punch head-on, a crazed expression appeared on his face as his spirit body swelled. He made a divine seal with his hands before pushing them toward Enlin's lower abdomen like lightning, upon which his essential soul power surged forth. Spirit power, infinite penetration. Boom! The blue essential soul power pierced through Enlin's lower abdomen before piercing through heaven and earth. Enlin couldn't help but throw up a mouthful of blood, and his body was hurtled through the air toward the steel ground. His body continued to sink, compress, and destroy. There seemed to be no end to the essential soul power in the air, and it crashed relentlessly into Enlin's body, as if it were trying to pulverize Enlin. 5 kilometers, 100 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers, 10,000 kilometers. Enlin was punctured by Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's infinite penetration, and the scorching core of the Steel Mountain Star was also punctured before it continued to crash into him. 50,000 kilometers. 200,000 kilometers. Boom! Enlin's body flew out from the other end of the Steel Mountain Star. Boundless blue soul power surged from both ends of the Steel Mountain Star. From afar, it looked as if a long and thin blue needle had suddenly appeared in the silver-gray ball, piercing through the entire ball. That's right, the entire Steel Mountain Star had been punctured by Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. A massive hole had also been blasted into Enlin's stomach, and most of his internal organs had been obliterated. If it weren't for the fact that his 5 elemental powers were able to resist the essential soul power, his body would have been completely obliterated by the terrifying soul power. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo panted heavily in the air. That attack had expended a lot of his soul power. He looked into the extremely far distance through the massive hole in the ground, and he was able to catch a glimpse of Enlin, who was still alive and kicking. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's flesh crawled upon seeing this. Was this guy really that tough? Even the extreme Dao Monkey Monarch, who possessed an invincible body, would be severely wounded after taking that infinite penetration attack. Unlin flew around the star before finally arriving before Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo again. His lower abdomen had already healed during his flight. As expected of the most powerful being in the realm of stars, you were able to hurt me. Unlin spoke with a solemn expression. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Chapter 1907. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo felt like he had been humiliated. He looked at Unlin and analyzed his condition. Unlin was also looking at Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo, and the golden halo behind him slowly rotated as 5 elemental divine light converged into the darkness. Both sides fell into a brief period of silence. Up in the sky, Su Xiaolan was silently spectating the battle, and she swallowed as her dragon sparrow sword hovered by her side, ready to assist Unlin at a moment's notice. All of a sudden, 2 sharp sounds of space being torn apart erupted. Boom, boom, boom. 2 devastating clashes erupted. Unlin and Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo clashed again. There wasn't much of a disparity between their powers. Regardless of whether it was in terms of speed, power, explosiveness, or regenerative abilities, they were evenly matched. Hence, this battle was very likely to become a battle of attrition. Boom, boom, boom. Each and every clash between the two of them was like the most terrifying nuclear explosion, making the Steel Mountain star tremor violently. If this was a battle taking place on Earth, Earth would have been reduced to rubble countless times already. 2 hours passed. The two of them were still engaged in a frenzied battle. Unlin swore that this was the longest battle he had ever fought in his entire life. He had initially scoffed at the legends of battles lasting several days and nights. How could anyone possibly fight for so long? Battles between cultivators were all unpredictable, and the slightest mistake could lead to eternal damnation, so no one was willing to fight a battle of attrition with you. It would be a dream to even fight for 2 hours, let alone several days and nights. However, he discovered that if things continued like this, they really were going to fight for several days and nights. This wasn't to say that they were weak. In reality, they could easily lose their heads if they weren't careful. However, even if they did lose their heads, they could quickly regenerate. Unlin had once exploded Heavenly Monarch Shi Ling's head, and the latter shuddered before using his essential soul power to create a new head. Unlin hadn't had his head exploded before. He didn't know if he would be able to survive if his head exploded, so he had to protect his head as a safety precaution. The two of them were still engaged in an intense battle. Before they knew it, a day had passed. Unlin had really fought for an entire day and night. As the golden disc spun, the power of the 5 elements continuously flowed into Unlin's body, allowing Unlin to fight like a perpetual motion machine. He could use his power to his heart's content and push through everything. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo could extract essential soul power from the boundless starry sky for his own use. His soul power was as boundless as an ocean, and not only could he use it to quickly regenerate his power, but he could also use it to recover from injuries. Both of their recovery abilities were so amazing that it made one's hair stand on end. Then, they fell into a strange stalemate. It was a stalemate that no living creature in the world could imagine. Each of their attacks could destroy heaven and earth, but they just couldn't kill each other. Unlin was quite annoyed by Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's cockroach-like behavior. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was also quite annoyed by Unlin's cockroach-like behavior. It had to be said that Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's control over his soul power really was top-notch. At the very least, it was more powerful than Unlin's God of Creation stage consciousness, so Unlin didn't unleash his own consciousness. Su Xiaolan was also given a fright by their stamina as she spectated from above. If she were in Unlin's shoes, her body would have been completely depleted a long time ago, but these two were still able to fight. Unlin, is he really going to be alright? Her brows furrowed slightly with concern as she looked at Unlin, who was becoming more and more exhilarated as the battle progressed. The more difficult it was to win, the more brutal the final battle would be. However, Unlin didn't call on her for help, which was why she wasn't doing anything. Su Xiaolan knew that Unlin wasn't a shameless person. If he really wasn't confident that he could defeat his opponent, Unlin would definitely call on her. So what was Unlin's trump card? Su Xiaolan's curiosity was piqued. She knew that Unlin had a few trump cards up his sleeve, but none of them seemed to be as powerful as his 5 elemental body. Bai Body Crushing Fist. Unlin launched a fist toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Boundless Spirit Realm. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo spread his hands open, and his blue soul power enshrouded the entire realm. He was then greeted by the sight of a projection of the Buzhou Mountain, which seemed to be able to crush the entire planet, crashing down mercilessly. Boom! Shockwaves swept forth for tens of thousands of kilometers. The Steel Mountain star tremored violently, and it was knocked away from its original planetary orbit. The entire Steel Mountain star had caved in. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had been flattened into a paper doll. Unlin rushed toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo, and a golden eye appeared on his forehead. Invisible ripples proliferated through the air. Divine Plunder Technique. In that instant, Unlin saw Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's Tao realm, as well as all of his cultivation methods and even his essential power. Thankfully, his consciousness was of an extremely high rank. Otherwise, he would have exploded from the massive influx of information. I want your essential soul power. A scorching light appeared on Unlin's face. As long as he could steal Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's essential soul power, he would be able to thrash his opponent even if he were a god of creation. The Divine Plunder Technique began to plunder Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's essential soul power. However, a surprise suddenly occurred at this moment. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo instantly sensed that something was amiss. Was Unlin trying to steal his essential soul power? This was something even more important than his life. He unleashed all of his power to resist Unlin's Divine Plunder Technique, and a tug-of-war ensued. 3 seconds later, Unlin's Divine Plunder Technique failed. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had already been flattened into a paper doll, but he was able to resist the Divine Plunder Technique with his own power. Unlin faltered slightly upon seeing this. At this moment, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's body reverted back to its original form, and soul power lightning revolved around one of his hands as he stabbed his other hand into Unlin's chest. Essential Soul Ignition. A sinister smile appeared on Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's face, and boundless essential soul power flames erupted from the hand that had stabbed into Unlin's chest in an attempt to incinerate his consciousness into ashes. So what if his body was powerful? If his consciousness was weak, he would be able to completely destroy his opponent's consciousness. However, before he had a chance to gloat over this, he discovered that his essential soul power had been forcibly repressed by Unlin's 5 elemental soul power. How could this be? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was dumbstruck. Bam! Unlin blasted Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's head with a single fist. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's body began to disappear. In the next second, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo appeared over 50 kilometers away with a dark expression on his face. His head had already returned to normal. Unlin's expression remained unchanged, as if he was already used to his opponent's antics. The two of them didn't say anything as they clashed again. Boom, boom, boom. The battle erupted again. Before they knew it, they had already been battling for 2 days and 2 nights. Unlin and Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's battle was still very intense. They were both trying to find out what trump cards their opponent had up their sleeves. Both of them had unleashed many trump cards, but all of them were nullified by their opponent. Normal trump cards were no longer useful, and they were both waiting for their opponent to unleash a trump card before unleashing a trump card of their own. Finally, after an earth-shattering clash, both of them flew back at the same time. Unlin couldn't take it anymore. F*CKU. If you're not going to use your trump card, I'm going first. Chapter 1908. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's eyes widened. Ultimate technique? You still have an ultimate move? He had originally thought that this was the limit of Enlin's strength. After all, everyone had used their trump cards, and the next step was to compete in endurance. In the end, the other party actually shouted that he was going to use his ultimate move? Why are you so surprised? Stop pretending. I know you also have a unique skill. Stop hiding it, Enlin said coldly. Heavenly King Bei Luo. Hide my ass. He had already used up all of his trump cards in the previous battle. If he really had an ultimate move, he would have used it long ago. Why would he hide it until now? Didn't they know that the longer it dragged on, the more variables there would be? You've been fighting for 2 days and 2 nights, yet you're still hiding your ultimate move? What are you thinking about? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was starting to panic. However, Enlin was even more panicked than him. This was Enlin's first time fighting a protracted battle. He didn't know if it was the right time to use his ultimate move. Were there any unspoken rules? If his ultimate move couldn't kill his opponent, would he be killed by his opponent's ultimate move? He panicked like a horse. Enlin took a deep breath, and a black divine halo suddenly appeared above his head. Authority of Metal, activate. A supreme godly aura began to spread. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's expression shifted with shock. What kind of power is this? Why can I sense the aura of the supreme laws of nature from it? Enlin chuckled. You're quite knowledgeable. I am now the supreme master of all metals in the world. Do you know why I chose to fight on the Steel Mountain Star? Just because it can take a beating? A bad feeling welled up in Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's heart. The earth began to shake, and countless towering steel mountains began to tremble. No, to be more precise, the entire Steel Mountain Star began to shake violently. A smile appeared on Enlin's face. The main element of this planet is metal, so everything on this planet can be used by me, because I am the king of metal. Boom, boom, boom. Countless pieces of steel rose into the sky from the ground below before hurtling toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. With this scrap metal? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo couldn't even be bothered to look at the steel. One had to realize that he was able to puncture the Steel Mountain Star's core with a single strike. He waved his hand lightly at the incoming steel, wanting to shatter it. Whoosh! It sounded like something had been pierced. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's expression shifted drastically, and he was just about to retaliate. At this moment, several sharp blades of steel tore through Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's aura before mercilessly stabbing into his body. Boom! In the next moment, the steel was shattered by his soul power. However, this was only the beginning. Previously, there were only a few steel blades piercing towards him. Now, there were dozens of them. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was astonished. You're able to fuse the star power of an entire planet into that steel? Every large star would give birth to its own energy. In the star field, this energy was called star force. The Steel Mountain Star naturally had its own star force. However, the star force was ethereal and uncertain. It was the supreme power of a star and even contained the will of the universe. It was only responsible for maintaining the growth of the star and couldn't be tamed at all. Not even the gods of creation. But now what did he see? Enlin was using his astral powers to deal with him? How could he be so freakish? As it turned out, the star force was quite powerful. At the very least, it had the power to break through his defenses. Enlin had only just discovered this. After unleashing his power of metal, he felt as if all of the matter on the entire planet was under his control. He didn't even need to summon metal from thin air. He could simply gather materials from the ground. In particular, after taking control of the entire planet, an extremely vast and unfathomable power lowered its noble head and submitted to him. That was the star force. This was the paramount power of metal, and it could even control the star force. The power of the heavenly gods was slightly more powerful than the star force, but that didn't mean that the star force was weaker. The star force had a very important characteristic, and that was that it was extremely vast. An entire star had been nurtured for countless years, and Enlil was well aware of just how vast and powerful the star force was. Several dozen steel spikes were shattered by Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's essential power. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was just about to attack Enlil when he discovered that several hundred spikes imbued with boundless power had appeared and were piercing toward his body in a merciless manner. It had multiplied by tenfold. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo let loose an enraged roar, and his blue soul power formed a realm of death around his body to shatter all of the spikes before pouncing toward Enlil. After that, he finally managed to shatter several hundred spikes. Tens of thousands of steel spikes imbued with rich star power had already swept toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo from all directions before crashing viciously toward the center. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Boom! The steel spikes imbued with specks of purple star power transformed Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo into a porcupine. However, in the next second, tens of thousands of steel spikes were all shattered by a burst of devastating power. Die! Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo pounced toward Enlil at an extremely fast speed while unleashing an almighty fist. Enlil chuckled coldly as he unleashed a fist of his own. Boom! Terrifying energy erupted on the planet. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's heart jolted. Enlil had unleashed such a massive amount of star power from the Steel Mountain Star, but why was his combat prowess still the same? All of a sudden, he was struck by a feeling that something was amiss. Why were there 6 strange balls hovering around him? He could sense a very similar paramount aura of laws from these balls. Crap! He was just about to evade. One of the balls unleashed an unparalleled gravitational force to instantly immobilize him. Boom! Lightning suddenly exploded. Insanity ravaged his body. 7 types of holy flames imbued with the power of laws then set his body ablaze. Wind and snow enshrouded the entire area. A black poisonous needle stabbed into Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's chest, upon which the lethal poison erupted in an attempt to corrode his spirit body as well. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo finally let loose a wail of anguish before his body was inundated by the powers of the heavenly gods. Enlil stood proudly in midair with a black halo revolving incessantly behind him, and a black metal divine halo hovered above his head. 6 small heavenly god balls revolved around him, releasing surging divine light, making him appear as if he were a heavenly god. 5 elemental body combined with the powers of the heavenly gods as well as the power of the stars. What do you think of my trump card? Enlil received no response. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was too focused on howling with anguish to respond. Of course, he didn't expect to receive a response from Enlil. He was only trying to flex. Following the eruption of the powers of the heavenly gods, the monotonous environment of the Steel Mountain Star was instantly filled with many colors, even though these were all destructive colors. A blue figure rushed out of the explosions of the powers of the heavenly gods in an extremely disheveled manner. It was so fast that even Enlin's eyes couldn't follow it, and it had clearly used some kind of extremely costly mystic technique. You want to run? No way. Enlil stomped a foot onto the ground, and the entire Steel Mountain Star tremored slightly. Chapter 1909. The entire Steel Mountain Star was under Enlin's control. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was indeed escaping very quickly, covering a distance of several hundred kilometers in the blink of an eye. However, the distance that he had escaped to was less than 1% of the Steel Mountain Star's diameter. And the steel that the Steel Mountain Star extended out could instantly pierce a certain distance. What did this mean? This meant that the Steel Mountain Star could instantly pierce 200,000 miles. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo hadn't even escaped for a second before he discovered that several hundred steel spikes were hurtling toward him at an incredible speed. The tips of the spikes were glowing with a rich purple star power, and they were extremely sharp. If he didn't use his power to defend himself, his body would definitely be punctured. And in front of him, densely packed steel spikes had appeared out of nowhere. All of these spikes had been formed from the ground of the Steel Mountain star. Countless steel spikes had appeared in the sky, on the ground, and in all directions. That's right, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had used a mystic technique to escape, but he was still surrounded by steel spikes. Furthermore, the amount of steel spikes this time was several hundred times that of the last pincer attack. There were several tens of billions of tons of steel imbued with star power, and anyone would fall into despair at the sight of this. This was truly a barricade between heaven and earth. Don't go, Brother Bei Luo. Let my Steel Mountain underling entertain you. Unlin stood on the surface of the Steel Mountain star with a calm expression, and his hands danced through the air as he unleashed his heavenly metal power to draw upon all of the power of the Steel Mountain star to trap Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Come on, have a taste of our Steel Mountain star's specialty, star power steel. He clapped his hands together, and boundless steel crashed toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo again. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo roared with rage as his essential soul power surged violently toward the star power steel up ahead. Scorching and pure blue soul power roared into the air like a dragon, tearing and melting all of the steel up ahead. However, the power of a dragon had an end, but there was no end to the steel. After all, this was an entire planet's worth of steel. If it were just normal steel, then that would be fine, but this was steel imbued with the star power of an entire planet. Unlin was frantically activating the steel on the ground to replenish what he had expended. The steel that had been destroyed only made up a third of the steel that had been replenished. The more Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo charged forward, the more despair he felt. He felt that there was a star in front of him waiting for him to collide with it. If it was an ordinary star, he could still smash it in half. However, the potential of this star had been activated by Enlin, and it could use star power. This was King frustrating. He clearly just wanted to escape the range of the Steel Mountain star so that Enlin couldn't borrow the power of the Steel Mountain star. He didn't expect that even this simplest plan couldn't be realized. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo charged forward for a few seconds, and the star power steel up ahead had already piled up to over 10,000 meters thick. The steel behind and on either side of his shoal were also stabbing forward in a terrifying manner. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo let loose an enraged roar as his body was rapidly plummeted. Rumble! He was pressed into the ground. The steel earth suddenly caved in, causing him to sink deeper into the Steel Mountain star. 10,000 meters, 100,000 meters, 1,000,000 meters. The absolute suppression of the steel made him sink deeper and deeper. The deeper he sank, the more steel there was, and the easier it was for the astral power to surround him. This was true despair. Boundless astral power surged violently in an attempt to crush and destroy Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was unable to escape from the star power steel in the past, and there was no way he could do so now. He was still being pressed down and continued to sink. His spirit body could not bear the burden and was instinctively trembling violently. 10,000 kilometers, 20,000 kilometers, 30,000 kilometers, 50,000 kilometers. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had been pressed into the center of the planet. The center of the Steel Mountain star was surrounded by a thick layer of star power steel that was over 100,000 kilometers under Enlin's control. How was he supposed to break through? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo, I've used the power of an entire star to bury you, and that's a testament to your lofty status. I thought you had some kind of trump card up your sleeve, but you're far too disappointing. Now, please die. Enlin's voice sounded from within the Steel Mountain star, and it was as if he were a god looking down upon this world. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo roared with rage and indignation. He was a paramount being of the spirit tribe, but he was being spoken to in such a tone. This was a blatant humiliation. Enlin stood on the surface of the Steel Mountain star, upon which a series of massive steel mountains extended into the clouds. His divine halo was also exuding a frosty divine light. He closed his eyes and sensed the pulse of the entire star before gripping the air with one hand. Star ball crushing technique, steel funeral. The entire star tremored violently as his voice fell, and all of the steel began to compress inward. Just how terrifying was the power produced by such a massive amount of steel? It was impossible to calculate. On top of that, the steel was imbued with the astral power that had been nurtured by the entire star for countless years, which was the highest level of power in this universe. This is the power of a star that has unleashed all of its latent potential. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo, can you handle it? Boom. The steel mountain star shuddered violently before returning to normal. Enlin's face was extremely pale and devoid of any color. That attack just then had expended far too much of his energy. His powers of the heavenly gods had only played a guiding role, but guiding such a gargantuan planet with such a vast amount of star power was still extremely taxing. What a surprising power! This level of power has far exceeded my imagination. It should be enough to kill Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo, right? Enlin exhaled as he unleashed his power of the heavenly gods to try and sense Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's condition. In all honesty, his trump cards were only the power of the heavenly gods combined with the normal attacks of the Steel Mountain Star. The ability to sense and control the star power was a completely unexpected bonus. This was an extremely bad *SS surprise, as it had completely unleashed the ferocious side of the star. The power of the heavenly gods had perfectly fused with the star. A thought suddenly appeared in Enlin's mind. If he could take this Steel Mountain Star back and use it as a weapon against the heavenly human tribe, wouldn't that be super bad *SS? Just as his imagination was running wild. Boom. The Steel Mountain Star shuddered again. Enlin still didn't know what had happened. All of a sudden, a sense of peril welled up in his heart, and he quickly fled from the surface of the star. Rip! A streak of blue light that was as sharp as a heavenly blade released a soul power that struck fear into the hearts of onlookers, and it swept through the entire Steel Mountain Star in a neat and tidy manner. It split the entire planet apart? Enlin's eyes widened in disbelief. Immediately afterward, a figure flew out from the planet. His entire body was burning with blood-colored origin soul power. Enlin, to actually make me burn my own natal divine soul. I, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo, am going to skin you alive, torment the divine soul for billions of years. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's hair was disheveled, and blood flowed from all of his orifices as he flew into the sky at an extremely fast speed. Enlin's expression changed drastically. Was the other party crazy? Was he going to fight with his life on the line? He waited solemnly and was about to block it. He was then greeted by the sight of Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo flying in the opposite direction. The next time we meet will be your doomsday. I will definitely come back. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo roared, as he fled into the distance at a speed that Enlin was completely unable to keep up with. Enlin was dumbstruck, and he didn't even know what to say as he stared at her disappearing figure. You're so *King powerful even when you're fleeing? I'm already so feeble, aren't you going to take this opportunity to *CK me up? Just as these thoughts were running through his mind, a ding-dong suddenly sounded from his system. Chapter 1910. Enlin had already given up on pursuing Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was simply too fast for him to catch up to. However, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was definitely not feeling very good either. From his enraged expression, it was quite clear that the mystic technique he had just unleashed had come at an extremely heavy price, and it wouldn't last for very long. Otherwise, he would definitely be chasing after Enlin. Enlin looked on at the departing Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo when the system suddenly chimed. He turned toward the system to find that a mission had been completed. Super Divine Might Technique. Beat a God of Creation stage living being into submission, mission completed. Now imparting the Super Divine Might Technique. Enlin, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was quite fierce with his words, but he was actually quite honest. As long as he was convinced, it wasn't a disgrace. Boom! A buzzing sound erupted in Enlin's mind. A golden divine might suddenly proliferated forth, enshrouding the entire planet. Su Xiaolan ran over with a smile and was just about to offer words of congratulations when her legs suddenly gave out from under her. On the heavenly cloud star, some of the living beings that were planning to escape were still looking on at the battle taking place on the neighboring star with nervous expressions on their faces. Bursts of explosive energy erupted from the Steel Mountain star, which resembled a small silver jade plate, as if it were a bomb that was constantly flashing with red light. This battle had tormented them for 3 days and 3 nights, and they were constantly on tenterhooks in fear that a disaster would suddenly descend upon their heavenly cloud star. Soon, very soon, there were still tens of millions of living beings waiting in line, so it was going to be their turn very soon. All of the living beings in the realm of stars looked up at the flashing stars as they lined up nervously. It was night time now, and they could see the Steel Mountain star again. However, they were soon greeted by an extremely astonishing sight. It split open. Holy F***ck. How did the Steel Mountain star get split in half? A one-eyed octopus monster's eyes widened as it screamed. A dragon with a profound cultivation base used his watermelon-eating divine ability and captured a flash of blue light. Then, the star was completely split into 2. It was clear that the Steel Mountain star had been cut open by a force. It muttered in disbelief, "You must be joking. The essence of that star is steel, and it's extremely dense steel. Such a large steel star was actually cut in half?" Many creatures were shocked and terrified. The Steel Mountain star was the most resolute planet in the surrounding realm of stars, yet it had still been sliced open. If they were to fight on the heavenly cloud star, they would most likely be blown up by those 2 monsters in just a few minutes. A commotion broke out around them. If it weren't for the fact that the powerful beings of the Azure Dragon tribe were maintaining order, the heavenly cloud star would have already descended into chaos. There wouldn't be so many living beings lining up obediently for teleportation. Ha ha ha. We won, we finally won. I have to tell Bai Shui and Qi Yu about this as soon as possible. The most powerful being on the heavenly cloud star, Kuan Gu, twisted his body with elation, and he immediately dialed a voice transmission talisman to relay the good news. At this moment, in outer space, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo looked behind him with an extremely tense expression, and he heaved a sigh of relief after discovering that Enlin really wasn't able to catch up to him. The burning red essential soul power around his body began to dissipate, revealing his extremely withered spirit body. His spirit body was completely shriveled and lifeless, as if he were a dried-up corpse. "You forced me to burn half of my consciousness. D***eminent. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's body trembled with rage. This mystic technique had damaged his Tao foundation, so there was no way he could recover to his original state no matter how much he cultivated. Not only that, but his severely wounded body would require countless years of nourishment before he could fully recover. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had suffered a crushing defeat. Not only was his body severely wounded, but he also had to face the terrifying retaliation of the 4-9 immortal sect of the brilliant void universe. He was struck by a sense of immense pressure just thinking about that gargantuan being. He couldn't afford to mess with them. He had to find a place to hide. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was very unwilling, but he had no choice but to accept his fate. He couldn't even defeat a single core disciple, so how was he supposed to fight the 4-9 immortal sect, which had at least 10,000 4-9 immortal sect disciples who were even more powerful than Enlin? In the face of such an invincible sect, he could only hide until they left the realm of stars or until they forgot about him. If 1,000 years wasn't enough, then he would hide for 10,000 years. If 10,000 years wasn't enough, then he would hide for 1,000,000 years. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was already contemplating his plan of survival. near the Steel Mountain star. Su Xiaolan's legs had turned to jelly in the face of an extremely oppressive monarch's might. She was a super mighty figure at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, who possessed the most regal vermilion bird bloodlines and true dragon bloodlines, but she was forced to bow her head in the face of Enlin's aura. This was an indication of just how terrifying Enlin's aura was. An apologetic expression immediately appeared on Enlin's face. I forgot to withdraw my aura just then. Sorry, being too bad *SS can be troublesome sometimes. Su Xiaolan opened her mouth to offer words of congratulations, but she gave up and rolled her eyes at Enlin. Su Xiaolan said, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo fled too quickly just then, and I wasn't able to stop him. What a pity. That's all right. If he dares to appear again, I'll hang him up and bash him, Enlin said in an indifferent voice. His voice was extremely calm and matter-of-fact. There was no hint of ferocity in his voice, but it was filled with peerlessly domineering pride, as if he were a monarch. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was a god of creation, and a rather powerful one at that. Enlin wasn't confident that he could hang him up and bash him, but whether or not he could do it was one thing, and how he was going to say it was another. All right, don't pretend in front of me. I know my Enlin is the most powerful being in this world, Su Xiaolan snapped. It's a pity that the Steel Mountain star has been destroyed. A forlorn expression appeared on Enlin's face. What do you want? Could it be that you want to take over this planet? Su Xiaolan was shocked. Of course. This is a very good weapon. However, my storage ring doesn't have that much space, so Little Na is probably the only one who can take this planet. Enlin stroked his chin with a thoughtful expression. The two of them rested for a while before returning to the Heavenly Cloud Star. On the Heavenly Cloud Star, all of the living beings around the teleportation spell formation wore expressions of awe and veneration upon seeing the two of them return. Some of them even lowered their heads and didn't dare to look at them. Ha ha! Senior Enlin, Sister Su Xiaolan, congratulations on defeating Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. You're both going to be renowned throughout the realm of stars. Kuan Gu ran over with a fawning expression. Enlin and Su Xiaolan had managed to force Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo away, and he didn't appear to have sustained any injuries, which was quite astonishing. The Azure Dragon tribe had made the right decision. You're far too kind, Kuan Gu. Let's hurry up and teleport Little Lan and I to the Vermilion Bird tribe territory. Enlin smiled. Kuan Gu blinked with confusion. What did happiness have to do with teleportation? You're a god of creation who defeated the spirit tribe. You've achieved so much, so why don't you flex and bask in the glory? Of course, Kuan Gu wasn't going to say that out loud. Instead, he did his part and activated the teleportation spell formation that he had prepared in advance. Kuan Gu spoke with a serious expression. Please stand at the center of the teleportation spell formation, and I'll teleport you to the Vermilion Bird tribe territory. Chapter 1911. Enlin held on to Su Xiaolan's hand as they stood at the center of the teleportation spell formation. This teleportation spell formation was extremely large, with a diameter of over 1 kilometer. There were also 99 white vital stones placed at the critical points of the spell formation. One vital stone was equivalent to 10,000 spirit stones. In other words, just the vital energy expenditure for this teleportation alone was close to 1,000,000 spirit stones, and this didn't even include the expenditure of other materials and preparations. The spell formation activated, and a vast spatial power surged. The 99 vital stones glowed with a brilliant light. Soon, Enlin felt a powerful spatial power enshroud his entire body as he hurtled toward another location. The scene before his eyes changed. It became a vast expanse of chaos. However, this wasn't chaos that was fraught with peril. Instead, it was chaos that was extremely stable, as if there was some kind of special power that had isolated the chaotic turbulence. So this is a high-speed spatial passageway? How extravagant, Su Xiaolan exclaimed. Unlin nodded in agreement. This high-speed passageway covered an astonishing distance. This was from the extreme east of the realm of stars to the extreme south of the realm of stars. Unlin didn't even dare to imagine just how far this distance was. However, the realm of stars was able to construct a stable spatial passageway between two locations. This was extremely impressive. Unlin, remember to keep a low profile when we get there. Don't cause too much trouble. Su Xiaolan thought to herself for a moment before reminding him. Xiaolan, do I look like the type of person to cause trouble? Unlin asked in a harmless voice. But you're not a person to cause trouble, Su Xiaolan replied. Unlin, all right, I promise you, I'll keep a low profile. He had to maintain the demeanor of a powerful cultivator and not be affected by external factors. In the extreme south of the realm of stars, within the core territory of the Vermilion Bird tribe, Vermilion Bird star system. The main star here was called the Vermilion Bird star. It was tens of thousands of times larger than normal stars in the realm of stars, and it was also known as the brightest star in the realm of stars. Around the blazing giant star, there were 8 other stars that were burning nonstop, revolving in a specific orbit, forming the famous 9-star orbit system in the star field. In the 9-star system, there were hundreds of planets orbiting. In terms of scale, the Vermilion Bird tribe's main star system was much larger than the Azure Dragon tribe's main star system. However, there were only 3 planets that were truly suitable for life to flourish. Of course, these lands of peril were ideal places for Vermilion Bird tribe living beings with high cultivation bases to train in. At this moment, on a fiery red planet that was not suitable for living beings to reproduce. The earth was scorching hot, and the air was twisted by the heat. On a fiery, sparkling mountain range, a large number of powerful creatures were working. These laborers came from all over the star field, including the Spirit Clan, the Star Clan, the Desolate Clan, the Dark Night Clan, the Faint Snake Clan, and even the Human Clan. Not only that, but even the weakest of them were at the spirit nurturing stage, and there were even return to void stage mighty figures among them. These living beings were all extremely powerful, but all of them were working hard without exception. They were all mining a kind of red crystal ore called flame crystal. This kind of crystal ore was planted deep in the mountain range and even connected to the fiery red planet. It was extremely hard and laborious to dig it out. A spirit nurturing stage living being would only be able to dig out 1 kilogram of crystal ore in a day. Even a return to void stage mighty figure would only be able to dig out a few thousand kilograms in a day. A series of Vermilion Bird living beings with extremely pure flame power supervised the laborers. All of the laborers had a target, and if they didn't meet their target, they would be burned to a crisp by them. These Vermilion Bird tribe supervisors were extremely arrogant and domineering, as if they were the most regal beings in the world. They beat and scolded the laborers as they pleased, but the laborers didn't dare to speak up. All they could do was to silently mine for a living. Chirp! You idiot! Who said you could slack off? A Vermilion bird with golden wings all over its body let out a strange cry. It opened its beak and breathed fire toward a human's butt. A man in a red robe suddenly caught on fire, and he howled in anguish. His face was twisted with pain, but there was a hint of excitement on it. He was burned for a long time before he finally managed to extinguish the flames on his back. Don't think that I won't burn you just because you're a return to void stage mighty figure. Living beings like you are all lowly beings in my eyes. The golden-winged vermilion bird raised its proud head to look down at the human it was burning. Its name was Huang Muzi, and it was a return-to-void stage supervisor who was responsible for punishing return-to-void stage miners who weren't working hard enough. An expression of humiliation appeared on the man's face. He had only looked up into the sky in a daze, only to be incinerated by the flames. What an unreasonable and violent supervisor! One day, he was going to cook this stupid C*NT bird and eat it. the red-robed man thought to himself as he carefully dug into the crystal mine with the power of the divine Tao with a special hoe in his hand. He was probably the most pitiful being in the realm of stars, right? A return to void stage mighty figure had been reduced to a miner. He wondered how Enlin, Su Xiaolan, Shangguan Yi, and Yang Yuan were doing. That's right, he was Enlin's friend, Mo Hai of the Vermilion Bird sect. Ever since he had been sucked into this world by an inexplicable spatial power, he had been separated from his friends and landed in the territory of the Vermilion Bird tribe. He felt like he had been summoned here as his ring represented the Vermilion Bird. Even though this ring had been snatched away by the Vermilion Bird tribe, Xiaolan still lent it to him for him to observe. To a certain extent, this was his opportunity. Sure enough, Mo Hai was warmly welcomed by the Vermilion Bird tribe. There were even some regal vermilion birds who transformed into beautiful women and danced for him. This was heaven. After that, the Vermilion Bird, one of the 4 holy beasts of the realm of stars, wanted to meet him in person. This was truly a great honor. Mo Hai could already envision himself receiving the true inheritance of the Vermilion Bird and becoming its most beloved disciple, thereby leading him to the pinnacle of his life. However, reality gave him a vicious slap to the face in the end. The Vermilion Bird suddenly sucked something out of his ring. Then, it instantly changed its attitude and sent him to the flame crystal mine to be a laborer. Mo Hai was completely dumbstruck. What the hell was going on? Things had developed far too quickly and far too cruelly, and his heart instantly shattered into pieces. After a few failed attempts to escape, he could only accept his fate in despair and work as a miner in the mine. Tears streamed down Mo Hai's face as he hammered the crystal mine in front of him with a hoe. He had cultivated arduously for several hundred years, only to be forced to work as a miner in the Flame Crystal Mountain Range. What the F***ck was going on? With this in mind, Mo Hai was a little dazed again. At this moment, a burst of scorching and pure flames suddenly exploded on his butt. Boom! Ah! Mo Hai was on fire again. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and get to work, you stupid C***nt! Huang Muzi roared with rage. Mo Hai's body was on fire, but he didn't try to extinguish the flames. It was as if he was wholeheartedly accepting his punishment. Huang Muzi was quite pleased with his attitude. However, if Huang Muzi could see the expression of enjoyment on Mo Hai's face, he most likely wouldn't think this way. Ah! Oh! Mo Hai moaned in both pain and pleasure. This was the only benefit he received from being sent here as a laborer, so he had to cherish it. Chapter 1912. Mo Hai had the ability to sense the true intent of the Tao of fire from other people's flames. The more others burned him, the more he was able to glean something from it. The higher the level of the flames, the more elated he was. The flames of the Vermilion Bird tribe powerful beings were extremely pure, and this was an excellent opportunity for him to improve his Tao of fire. Hence, Mo Hai was quite fond of this irascible manager who would burn people at the slightest provocation. Mo Hai didn't use his ability to extinguish the flames when he was being burned. Instead, he allowed the flames to extinguish on their own. Huang Muzi was quite fond of him for his sincerity. This was probably a win-win situation. Mo Hai continued to mine diligently. Whenever he wanted to feel good, he would intentionally make mistake. Then, Huang Muzi would burn him in a fit of rage. Thus, he would become content and continue to mine. This was a virtuous cycle. However, gradually a few days passed. Mo Hai discovered that something was amiss. He discovered that Huang Muzi wouldn't burn him when he made mistakes. This made him feel very strange. Mo Hai was quite perplexed. There was one time when Huang Muzi was looking at him, and he intentionally looked up into the sky in a daze. Huang Muzi took a glance at him before silently averting his gaze and turning to the others. Mo Hai. Why didn't he burn him? Could it be that Huang Muzi had discovered something? Was this B***tch going to take away his only hobby? Supervisor Huang Muzi, I'm sorry. I got distracted again, Mo Hai suddenly yelled. Huang Muzi faltered slightly upon hearing this, and he turned to Mo Hai with a dumbstruck expression. Mo Hai was quite pleased with himself. If you don't take the initiative to discover my mistakes, then I'll expose my own mistake. You're going to burn me now, right? Otherwise, what will all the other return to void stage miners think? Huang Muzi was struck by a sense of absurdity. He didn't take the initiative to burn him, but he was begging him to do so? He stared blankly at Mo Hai with a hint of disdain before a hint of sympathy appeared in his eyes. Mo Hai, I know there's something wrong with your brain and you often make mistakes. However, your attitude toward admitting your mistakes is the best among all the miners I've ever seen. When you were being burned by my divine flame, not only did you not try to extinguish the flames, you were even able to force a smile on your face even in the face of extreme pain. Mo Hai was dumbstruck. He forced a smile on his face? He was just feeling so good that he couldn't help but hold it in. Huang Muzi heaved a faint sigh. Truth be told, I've been touched by your spirit. Although your bloodline is despicable, your brain is a little problematic, and you are a little silly, your dedicated work attitude, and your precious spirit of smiling despite being subjected to inhuman punishment are worthy of my protection. I even want to recommend you to be the representative of the miners. A model miner. Mo Hai's eyes widened with incredulity as he stared at Huang Muzi. Are you surprised? Don't be nervous, this is the treatment you deserve, Huang Muzi said in a gentle voice. Mo Hai, idiot! What? Huang Muzi's eyes widened, and he flared up with rage a few seconds later. You're courting death. Rumble! Huang Muzi spat out scorching divine flames toward the insolent man before him. Mo Hai screamed in the flames. Mo Hai was satisfied. Sure enough, such days were the most fulfilling days. Everything else was fake. Huang Muzi only left after torturing Mo Hai for a while. Lowly human, if it weren't for the fact that you still have some value to me, you would have died a long time ago. Reflect on yourself. Mo Hai lay on the ground with a glazed expression and panting heavily. He was currently in sage mode, which was a desireless state, so he was thinking about many things. Even though his current life wasn't bad, he really didn't want to waste any more time here in this life or death situation. He wanted to return to the sect and fight alongside the disciples and elders of the sect, but, even though I want to leave, I can't. Mo Hai sighed with resignation. I'm facing one of the 4 secluded tribes of the realm of stars, the Vermilion Bird tribe. They won't allow laborers to leave this planet. Mo Hai was struck by despair at the thought of the Vermilion Bird tribe. Even the Vermilion Bird sect, which he was so proud of, couldn't compare to such a colossus. Aside from Su Xiaolan and Enlin, the Vermilion Bird sect only had 2 Dao integration stage super mighty figures, which was already very impressive on the Tai Chu continent. But here, there were several dozen Dao integration stage Vermilion Birds. Even all of the Dao integration stage super mighty figures in the human race couldn't compare to the Vermilion Bird tribe. Not only that, but the Vermilion Bird tribe even had a god of creation with a holy birth. How could someone like Mo Hai challenge a power of this caliber? Even a god of creation wouldn't be able to save him. Who can save me? No one can save me. Mo Hai lay on the ground and stared blankly up at the sky. He was suddenly struck by a sense of fragrant aroma. At this moment, a muscular man with a buzz cut walked over with his share of flame crystals. He was going to grab a meal, and he patted Mo Hai's shoulder with a smile when he saw Mo Hai lying lifelessly on the ground. Brother, don't think too much about other things. The Vermilion Bird tribe is too invincible, and we can't resist them. Don't think too much about these things. We'll be free after 10,000 years of mining. It'll be very fast. More tears streamed down Mo Hai's face. Mining for 10,000 years. How the F***ck was that going to end? The muscular man extended a hand. In the boundless realm of stars, our human race is still too weak compared to the vermilion bird tribe, so we should help each other. My name is Enlightened Daoji. How should I address you, fellow cultivator? Mo Hai looked at the muscular man's ferocious face, and he really couldn't associate him with the name Daoji. However, he still extended a hand. Hello, my name is Mo Hai. Daoji looked at Mo Hai with a benevolent expression. Even though Mo Hai was a little retarded, he was still favored by Huang Muzi. If he could make good use of this relationship, his future mining career would be much easier. Just as he was thinking about this, boom boom boom, the earth suddenly began to tremor. A dazzling light suddenly erupted from a massive spell formation. This is... Mo Hai looked toward a certain direction. It's a teleportation spell formation. More living beings are coming, Daoji exclaimed. All the miners turned their gazes toward the teleportation spell formation. There was either sympathy or schadenfreude on their faces. All the living beings that were teleported to the Red Sparrow planet were classified as first-class workers, second-class visitors, and third-class travelers. However, regardless of which category they belonged to, there was a very high probability that they would be left here to work as miners after the matter was over. It was a nice way of saying that they would have a friendly exchange. After all, they had come and gone. Since this place was being used by living beings, the living beings naturally had to repay them in some way. Mo Hai was also looking on, and his heart was filled with worry. Who would be the unlucky one this time? Chapter 1913. 3 vermilion bird tribe cultivators with powerful auras had already gathered near the spell formation. Among them was Huang Muzi. They were all supreme beings of the return to void stage, so they had no problem dealing with ordinary visitors. I wonder what rank of being it is. Judging from the powerful energy fluctuations from the spell formation, it should be quite extraordinary. A vermilion bird with blue flames burning all over its body said indifferently. No matter where it comes from or who its backing is, it's not as powerful as our vermilion bird tribe. If it doesn't understand humility and doesn't know how to work, then no matter who it is, I can make it work as a miner on the red vermilion bird planet. A vermilion bird with rainbow-colored feathers raised its head proudly. That's right. No matter what the other party's background was, it wasn't as powerful as theirs. I hope it's a supreme being of the return to void stage. The rate at which the flame crystals are being mined is still too slow, and we're still lacking in manpower, Huang Muzi said expectantly. The 3 supreme beings of the return to void stage were discussing fervently. There were also many vermilion bird tribe cultivators observing from the sidelines. The miners in the distance were also sneaking glances at them, including Mo Hai. A brilliant light flashed. 2 figures finally appeared under everyone's expectant gazes. Mo Hai's breathing almost stopped as his eyes widened in shock when he saw the faces of the 2 people. The white-robed male had a handsome appearance, and his clear eyes were constantly surveying his surroundings as if he was a curious child who had come to a new and interesting place to explore. The azure-robed female was so beautiful that she didn't seem like a mortal being. She had an extremely noble and holy disposition, and when she arrived at this place, her bright eyes blinked lightly. There was also a hint of familiarity on her curious face. It's actually 2 humans? The rainbow-colored vermilion bird's heart jumped slightly. That's strange. Why can't I sense their cultivation bases? Are they using some special mystic technique to conceal their cultivation bases? Huang Muzi asked curiously. The other members of the vermilion bird tribe could still maintain their composure. However, all the human miners were dumbstruck. To be more precise, they were stunned by her beauty. The appearance of that unfamiliar female had them completely stunned, and they couldn't take their eyes off her. Was there really such a beautiful woman in this world? Holy F***ck. That celestial maiden, Daoji, must protect her. The brawny man muttered with a scorching gaze. Mo Hai couldn't help but glance at the brawny man. You want to protect her? She could easily kill you with a wave of her sword. But very quickly, a worried expression appeared on Mo Hai's face. Why hadn't Lin and Su Xiaolan also come here? Although they were very powerful, they were facing the even more powerful and terrifying Vermilion Bird tribe. If they didn't run now, they would be dragged to become miners. Yes, the ones who had descended on the Red Sparrow planet were Lin and Su Xiaolan. Is this the territory of the Vermilion Bird tribe? What a dense fire energy! Su Xiaolan exclaimed in surprise. She held onto Lin's hand again and said with a smile, "Let's have a good stroll." The sight of the cyan-clothed woman taking the initiative to hold hands made countless human miners feel as if they could hear the sound of their own hearts breaking. There was no justice in this world. How could such an ordinary-looking man obtain the admiration of such a top-notch fairy? In such a vile place, only living beings with decent cultivation bases can stroll around. And Lin chuckled. He looked around and said, "Speaking of which, it seems like we're quite popular here." The three returned to Void Stage Vermilion Birds had already surrounded Lin and Su Xiaolan. Scorching flames that were capable of warping the void around them surged around their bodies, and there was a malicious smile on their faces. "My name is Kai, and I'm the supervisor of the miners on the Red Sparrow planet. Tell me honestly, why have you come to the Vermilion Bird's territory?" The Vermilion Bird with colorful feathers spoke in a cold yet pleasant voice. "Hello, Ms. Kai. I'm Su Xiaolan, and this is my Dao partner, Lin. We've come here to pay our respects to the venerable holy Vermilion Bird beast." Su Xiaolan seemed to be completely unfazed by Kai's cold tone, and she still replied politely, "Impudent! How dare you?" The three returned to Void Stage Vermilion Birds roared in rage at the same time. Huang Muzi's entire body trembled with rage. "How dare you address the great Empress Vermilion Bird by her name? You have to address her as Great Empress Vermilion Bird," Kai screeched. "This is no longer a matter of whether we address her as Great Empress Vermilion Bird or not. They've already offended the Great Empress Vermilion Bird, so we have to punish them by making them mine here for 10,000 years. The Vermilion Bird, whose entire body was covered in blue flames, spoke in a sinister voice. Su Xiaolan. Mo Hai paced around anxiously in the distance. Indeed, things had progressed in the worst direction. What could he do? Should he immediately run over and persuade them? At this moment, the expressions of the two people in the center of the spell formation shifted. "We have to keep a low profile, we have to be kind to birds." Lin and Su Xiaolan both recalled their previous agreement. "We're sorry, we were indeed too rash and accidentally offended the Great Empress Vermilion Bird. However, we really do have an extremely important matter that we wish to discuss with the Great Empress Vermilion Bird. Please go and notify her." Su Xiaolan squeezed out a smile. "Hee. Do you think the Great Empress Vermilion Bird is someone you can meet just because you want to?" Kai chuckled coldly. A mocking smile appeared on Huang Muzi's face. "Humans are always full of themselves and think that they're very important. They think that they have the right to speak with Great Empress Vermilion Bird on equal terms. The last person as stupid as you is already a minor." Mo Hai's face convulsed slightly. "Is he talking about me?" Lin looked at Huang Muzi, whose nose was about to flip into the sky. He, who wasn't inferior to anyone, suddenly felt like stewing bird meat. When had he ever been bossed around by a trash of the Return to Void stage? "Calm down, I have to calm down. I have to keep a low profile and avoid conflict. They were here to settle their karma, not to fight. Then, what do we have to do to meet the Great Empress Vermilion Bird?" Su Xiaolan asked in a gentle voice as she repressed her rage. "Tell us in detail why you're looking for the Great Empress Vermilion Bird." Huang Muzi raised his head and glared at Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan was a little hesitant. If you're not going to tell us, then you're going to stay here and mine," Kai yelled. "All right." Su Xiaolan gave in. We're actually here because my bloodline has sensed the call of the vermilion bird. Call of the vermilion bird? Huang Muzi's voice faltered. The other vermilion bird tribe living beings also fell silent. All of a sudden, raucous laughter sounded. Ha ha ha! Did I hear that right? A human is saying that his bloodline has been summoned by the great Empress Vermilion Bird? Even if you possess a trace of our tribe's noble bloodline, how can a mixed blood like you have the right to be summoned by the great Empress Vermilion Bird? It's your honor to be able to come here to the red Vermilion Bird planet, yet you're actually trying to use such a clumsy lie to see the great Empress Vermilion Bird's true appearance. Ha ha ha! How hilarious! This ignorant and stupid woman has made me laugh today. What? What AB asterisk TCH? Let's send her to the mines. All the Vermilion Bird living beings roared with laughter as they ridiculed Su Xiaolan. At this moment, Anlin's expression had already completely darkened. Chapter 1914. Anlin originally wanted to calm down, but these birds didn't know what was good for them. They actually dared to scold Xiaolan in front of him. How could he tolerate this? What's wrong? Are you upset? Huang Muzi couldn't help but chuckle coldly at the sight of Anlin's darkening expression, and he said, "No matter how angry you are, you have to endure it. You should know what our Vermilion Bird tribe is like. We're not something you humans can afford to mess with. Tui trash." Huang Muzi blasted a mouthful of flames onto Anlin's face. Anlin used his qi-jin to shake it off in time. Huang Muzi's expression changed slightly, and he immediately flared up with rage. "All right. How dare you refuse to accept my flame punishment? Haven't you realized your mistake?" Huang Muzi blasted another mouthful of scorching divine flames toward Anlin's face. Rumble! The energy exploded. "Anlin!" Su Xiaolan exclaimed. The flames dispersed. Anlin was still standing in the same place. His face was burnt black and his hair was curled up. Su Xiaolan's eyes widened when she saw Anlin's expression. Why didn't you block it? Even if he didn't block it, he shouldn't have been burned to this state. Let alone Huang Muzi, even a Dao integration stage super mighty figure wouldn't be able to inflict so much as a scratch on Anlin even if he were to lay on the ground and allow them to pummel him. In an instant, Su Xiaolan understood Anlin's intentions. Was he pretending to be pitiful? Anlin stood still with a pained expression on his face. His eyes were red as he asked with grievance, "How is it? Are you satisfied now that you've tortured me like this? Can you take us to see great Empress Vermilion Bird now?" Inkai let out a melodious laughter and spat out another flame at Anlin. The rainbow-colored divine flames engulfed Anlin's body. The groan of the man after being burned came from inside, as if a tough man had no choice but to succumb to extreme pain, causing Inkai's entire body to feel comfortable. Take you to see great Empress Vermilion Bird? What a joke! In the past, only great Empress Vermilion Bird has requested to see others. When has anyone ever requested to see great Empress Vermilion Bird? Kai chuckled. Even the four holy beasts don't have the right to meet the great Empress Vermilion Bird unless she invites them. How could lowly and insignificant beings like you have the right to meet her? A look of disdain appeared on Huang Muzi's face as he spat another ball of flames at Anlin. However, this time, the flames suddenly scattered in midair. Huang Muzi faltered slightly before turning to look at the azure-robed woman beside him. He could see that there were still residual vital energy fluctuations in her hand. You actually blocked the attack for him? Burn her. This bitch is itching for a beating. Let's burn her. Inkai waved her wings and shouted. Stop acting. Su Xiaolan bit down on her lower lip. Even if you're acting, I don't want to see you being bullied like this. Anlin looked at the azure-robed woman and sighed upon seeing the aggrieved expression on her exquisitely beautiful face. I also don't want you to be scolded by these trash. I've always disliked these B***stards, but since you've said so, what are you saying? Obediently accept our punishment. Inkai screeched and spat out a ball of flames that surged toward Su Xiaolan. The flames had only just spat out when a pair of hands viciously pressed down on her body. Inkai was struck by a sense of terror, and she screamed in terror. Then, a massive palm print appeared on her body, and her bones and flesh ruptured as she was ruthlessly smashed into the ground. Boom! The terrifying shock waves caused the surrounding earth to tremor violently. Stop talking so much. I've wanted to teach you a lesson for a long time. How dare you scold my Xiaolan? Anlin spoke in a cold voice as he stomped down on the half-dead Inkai's head. Gasped. All of the Vermilion Bird tribe members and miners were astonished. That human insta-killed a return-to-void stage Vermilion Bird? How dare you attack the foreman? You're courting death. I'll kill you. Huang Muzi flared up with rage as he pounced toward Anlin. Boom! A massive vital energy hand crashed down. Huang Muzi was flattened into the ground, and his body was pulverized. Anlin spoke in a cold voice. How dare you speak to me like that? Those who offend the Vermilion Bird tribe shall die. The return-to-void stage Vermilion Bird with dark blue flames burning all over its body spread its wings and unleashed a vast power of the divine Tao that swept through a radius of over 50 kilometers. Dao Ji's expression shifted slightly upon seeing this. Such a powerful aura! This Vermilion Bird is a top-notch mighty being at the return-to-void pinnacle stage. Boom! Anlin delivered another slap to the face. The power of the dark blue flames of the divine Tao was instantly reduced to ashes. The Vermilion Bird was flattened into the ground, and it was unknown whether it was dead or alive. This. Dao Ji drew a sharp intake of breath. He hadn't even recovered from his shock, and this white-robed male had already crippled the Vermilion Bird? The three return-to-void stage Vermilion Birds were completely defenseless, and they were all flattened into the ground by that male's palm. No wonder this male dared to attack. He's definitely the most powerful cultivator in our human tribe. He's a Dao integration stage, super mighty figure. Dao Ji came to a sudden realization. No wonder he was admired by such a beautiful celestial maiden. However, he soon shook his head in disappointment again. What a pity! So what if he's a Dao integration stage, super mighty figure? In the territory of the Vermilion Bird tribe, there are a bunch of powerful Dao integration stage, super mighty figures like him. It's great that he's acting up for his beauty now, but the vengeance of the Vermilion Bird tribe will definitely be far more terrifying than he can imagine. He's definitely going to die here. Sigh. What a fool. Dao Ji shook his head in disappointment. He then turned to look at the peerlessly beautiful woman in a jade dress and sighed with emotion. It's just a pity that such a woman is also going to die here. Sure enough, the other Vermilion Birds were stunned to the spot. However, their anger and resentment had yet to dissipate. Although the miners were shocked by Anlin's battle prowess, the sympathy in their eyes was even more pronounced. Evidently, they also thought that Anlin and the others wouldn't be able to survive for much longer. Anlin, Su Xiaolan, don't stay here. Hurry up and run. Why are you so weak? It's still not too late to run now. A man in a red robe that had been burned into tatters suddenly yelled. Dao Ji was stunned as he looked at this cheap brother he had just gotten to know. Mo Hai was actually acquainted with those two cultivators who had caused trouble? Dao Ji was momentarily dazed. Then, using his quick-witted brain, he immediately sentenced Mo Hai to death. It would have been fine if Mo Hai hadn't stepped forward. Now that he had stepped forward, didn't he become Anlin and Su Xiaolan's companion? Would the Vermilion Bird tribe let him go? Obviously not. A dumb C**NT is a dumb C**NT. Why did I choose to befriend him in the first place? Wait. Befriend him? It was as if a bolt of lightning had struck Dao Ji's mind, causing him to freeze on the spot. Fuck. He had just made friends with Mo Hai. There were other miners on the field who saw it. If that's the case, won't I be implicated as well?